The thought loop virus. Imagine this. You're standing at the edge of a personal disaster. Your mind is unraveling, anxiety rising, thoughts spiraling so fast you can't hold on to reality. But suddenly, like a lifeline thrown across time, you remember something. You already invented the cure for this. Somewhere in your own future, in some moment of clarity yet to come, you built the solution to this very breakdown. The memory of that solution pulls you back, steadying your mind, keeping you safe from the edge. Relief floods through you. You're saved by a memory from a future you haven't lived yet. But then the paradox begins to gnaw at you. Because what if that breakdown, the one you just survived, only happened because your brain knew it would one day invent the cure? What if the memory of future salvation created the very crisis that demanded it? This isn't just a story. It's a mind trap, a thought virus, a glitch in the logic of how we experience time, memory, and self. Let's dive deeper. Our brains are prediction machines, forever running simulations of what might come next. Every fear, every hope, every invented scenario is part of this internal weather system. Now, imagine what happens when your mind gets caught in a loop, where the only way out of pain is to remember that you will solve it in the future. And yet, the pain only exists because that future solution is already haunting your mind today. Psychology knows this phenomenon well. We call it anticipatory anxiety, feedback loops, even self-fulfilling prophecies. But here, it's more insidious. It's as if your mind is running a piece of code that says, you must break down so you can invent the cure. And you invent the cure because you remember breaking down. Cause and effect collapse into each other. It's not linear. It's a circle, a feedback virus eating its own tail. Real life is full of these loops. Think about addiction recovery. Many people relapse not just because of weakness, but because the memory of past failures and imagined future recoveries creates a weird pressure. I'll be okay. I always find my way back, they tell themselves. But sometimes, that safety net becomes the very reason they let themselves fall again. The mind expects the rescue, so it allows the crisis. The memory of healing seeds the very wound it's supposed to close. Or think about exam stress. You've survived panic before, so this time you reassure yourself, I'll get through this, I always do. But that comfort can turn to complacency. Your brain remembers triumph over breakdown, so it secretly expects to need saving. Subconsciously, you let anxiety bloom, just so you can be the hero in your own story once again. The thought loop virus has taken hold. At its most extreme, this is how some forms of mental illness sustain themselves. People can become trapped in cycles of breakdown and recovery, not because the outside world is changing, but because the memory of both states is locked in a loop. I know I'll be okay because I always hit bottom, then rise. It sounds like hope, but it's really a loop. Sometimes, the only way out is to break the cycle entirely, to stop believing you will always need saving, and instead, dare to build a life where you don't. This thought loop virus is fueled by how memory and imagination interact. Neuroscience shows that the brain uses almost the same neural circuitry to remember the past and to imagine the future. To your mind, a memory of something that hasn't happened yet, a future memory, can feel as real as anything from your childhood. And if you trust that future memory, you might unconsciously set up the crisis just to fulfill the prophecy. You manufacture your own rescue. There's a dark beauty in this. It means we are, in a way, time travelers within our own skulls, sending messages from future selves, saving ourselves from the edge. But it also means we can get stuck, unable to move forward, trapped in recursive scripts where pain and salvation feed off each other forever. Every breakdown is justified by the memory of healing, and every healing only matters because of the breakdown. The loop is almost impossible to see until you step outside it. So, how do you break out? It starts with recognizing the script. Notice when your brain is soothing itself with a future solution, especially if that comfort seems to trigger the very anxiety it promises to cure. Ask yourself, are you really in crisis, or are you reliving a story your brain has already written? Sometimes, breaking the loop means refusing both the pain and the cure. It means writing a new ending, one where you don't need to fall just to rise again. Maybe that's the real antidote to the thought loop virus. The courage to exist without the comfort of guaranteed salvation, to face each moment as it is, not as a chapter in an endless cycle of breakdown and recovery. Because if you're always inventing the cure in the future, You might never realize you're already whole in the present. The past and future will keep trading places until you stop and step into the now, free from the virus, the loop, and the lie that you need to suffer in order to be saved. The observer that corrupts. Imagine being granted the impossible, an observer's seat outside of time, watching your own story unfold. You see every branching timeline, every possible mistake and miracle. And in one of those futures, you witness catastrophe, a collapse so complete it erases not just you, but everyone you love. Maybe it's a personal tragedy. Maybe it's the unraveling of the world. It doesn't matter. The sight alone brands itself into your memory. You ache to change it. You ache to undo what's already done. So, you return to the past, not by machine, but through memory, instinct, premonition, or some quantum fluke. You go back, desperate to warn yourself, desperate to save everything. You act on this forbidden knowledge, thinking you're the hero, but in that moment, reality fractures, because it was never the tragedy that broke the timeline. It was you, the act of seeing, the act of knowing, that set the collapse in motion. The observer corrupted the outcome. This isn't just sci-fi, it's the paradox at the heart of quantum physics and human psychology. In the quantum world, observation is not passive, it's disruptive. A particle exists in a state of probability, a cloud of maybes, until you look. The very act of measurement forces it to choose, collapses it into certainty, and destroys the other possibilities. Physicists call it the observer effect. But what if this effect isn't limited to subatomic particles? What if it shapes time, memory, and destiny itself? Every time you watch a moment from afar, judge it, analyze it, obsess over it, you change its meaning. Imagine you watch a friend betray you. In that first instant, you're hurt, but you move on. But later, you replay it again and again. Each time, your memory distorts, your anger grows, your story hardens. The observation itself becomes the source of suffering. The wound festers not because of what happened, but because you keep revisiting it. You are the observer that corrupts. You fracture your own timeline. Now, scale this up to the cosmic. Picture a timeline where humanity thrives, until someone, somewhere, becomes aware of a looming disaster. Maybe a scientist detects a future asteroid strike, or a prophet dreams of apocalypse. The warning spreads. Panic erupts. In the chaos to avoid disaster, society collapses. Not because of the asteroid, but because of the reaction to the knowledge itself. The prophecy fulfilled not by fate, but by observation. The loop is closed. The timeline shatters. There are stories across cultures, Greek myths, Hindu scriptures, ancient parables, where the attempt to avoid fate seals it. Oedipus flees a prophecy and runs straight into its jaws. In trying to change the story, the hero becomes its architect. Is this just a cautionary tale, or is it a law of reality itself? Could every act of watching, every obsession with control, be the source of the very chaos we fear? Let's return to the mind. Psychologists know that rumination, constantly replaying a trauma or fear, doesn't heal you. It deepens the wound. Neuroscience tells us that each time you remember an event, you don't retrieve it perfectly. You rewrite it. You corrupt the timeline of your own past. Trauma loops, regret spirals, anxious forecasting, these are all forms of observation that alter reality, turning memories into prisons and fears into self-fulfilling prophecies. The more you watch, the more you warp. You are both observer and creator of your suffering. Consider time travel stories. In the most haunting versions, the hero returns to warn themselves, only to become the very cause of the catastrophe. They flee a disaster, only to ignite it. They save a loved one, only to lose themselves. The paradox is clear. Knowledge of the future corrupts the present, and the attempt to escape fate forges new chains. The observer's intervention is the fracture point. But why does this happen? Why is the act of knowing so dangerous? On the quantum level, it's because the universe is possibility until we measure it. On the human level, it's because attention is energy. Whatever you watch grows. Whatever you fear multiplies under your gaze. You create by observing. You break by obsessing. In a sense, you are both the guardian and the saboteur of your timeline. Let's make it personal. Have you ever tried to fix a mistake so hard, so obsessively, that you only made it worse? Maybe you sent that second message, the apology, the over-explanation, trying to fix a friendship or romance, and found it slipped further away. The original problem was small, but your observation, your intervention, made it impossible to return. The act of watching, of interfering, of refusing to let go, corrupted the outcome. It's the heartbreak of overthinking, the exhaustion of endless self-monitoring. You can't help but watch. You can't help but break. Now, imagine a world that truly ran on this principle, a reality where every act of observation changed not just your experience, but the fundamental structure of the timeline, a universe where attention was the most powerful force, and ignorance, the art of letting go, was the only way to heal. What would society look like? Would we hide from knowledge? Would we dare to know the future, knowing we might shatter it just by looking? Or would we finally accept that to watch is to create, to obsess is to destroy, and that sometimes the only way to save the story is to step back and let it unfold? This is the terror and the strange liberation of the observer that corrupts. You are not a powerless spectator. You are the architect of the very events you fear. Every timeline you try to save may collapse beneath the weight of your own awareness. And yet, within this, there is hope. If your observation can break, it can also heal. If attention can distort, it can also release. You are both the villain and the redeemer, the cause and the cure. The answer isn't to never look. The answer is to look with compassion, with humility, with the willingness to let go of control. In the end, every timeline is fragile. Every reality is a dance of knowing and unknowing, of watching and letting be. You are not just the victim of fate or the puppet of paradox. You are the observer, the creator, the destroyer, the one who shapes the story by daring to see it, and sometimes by daring to turn away. So the next time you're haunted by a memory, obsessed by a possible future, or tempted to fix every flaw in your life, ask yourself, am I saving this timeline, or am I the fracture that shatters it? Sometimes the most radical act is not to warn, not to interfere, but to trust the unfolding, to allow reality its chance to heal, uncorrupted by the shadow of your gaze. That is the strange, unsettling, and deeply human paradox of the observer that corrupts, the story of how every hero becomes their own undoing, and how sometimes the only way to save the world is to stop watching it break. The suicide survival spiral. You wake up one morning haunted by a thought that refuses to leave. What if the only way to escape your suffering is to destroy the future version of yourself that carries it? This isn't just a desperate fantasy, it's a plan, a psychological blueprint for ending the cycle of pain. But what you don't realize is that this very act doesn't erase the suffering. It merely transfers it. In the act of killing your future self, you become the new target, the self that survives, the self that, in time, must face the same impossible choice. This is the suicide survival spiral, a psychological loop as chilling as it is real. Most people imagine time as a straight line, a before, a now, an after. But for someone lost in this spiral, time becomes a circle of dread. Every attempt to escape is actually a step closer to the very fate you're running from. You imagine ending it all to save yourself from what's to come. But the moment you contemplate that act, you're already dividing yourself, the self that suffers and the self that will bear the cost. The mind splits, the future becomes an enemy, and the spiral begins. You see this pattern in real life more often than you might think. Someone feels trapped by trauma, addiction, or depression. They fantasize about escaping not just their current suffering, but the person they're becoming under its weight. The idea isn't just to die, it's to prevent a future in which the pain grows stronger. But here's the cruel twist. In trying to annihilate that future self, you cement your own place in the spiral. If the act succeeds, the story ends. If it fails or is interrupted, you survive. But now you are the future self who must face the old pain and the fresh trauma of your own attempt. It becomes a feedback loop of agony. Imagine someone who tries, fails, and wakes up days later in a hospital. The world congratulates them for surviving, for being strong, for still being here. But in their mind, they are now the version who was supposed to disappear. They carry not only the original suffering, but the existential burden of having survived the attempt to destroy themselves. The spiral tightens. Every escape from pain becomes a new source of pain. Every survival becomes a prelude to the next crisis. Psychologists call this cyclical self-destruction. The more you try to run from yourself, the more the self becomes an inescapable trap. The spiral deepens when you layer on the guilt and confusion that society throws at survivors. You survived. Shouldn't you be grateful? You lived. Shouldn't you want to live more? But the spiral is not about logic. It's about an inner war where each round leaves scars for the next. The future you wanted to kill now lives inside you, waiting for the cycle to begin again. You see echoes of this spiral everywhere, in stories of those who relapse after recovery, in people who sabotage their own progress just as hope begins to glimmer, in those who, after every dark night, fear the dawn, not because of what it promises, but because it means another day of holding on. It's a paradoxical form of survival, living not for hope, but for the anticipation of the next crisis, the next escape plan, the next imaginary execution of the future self. This spiral is fueled by the mind's most dangerous illusion, the idea that you can finally become free by destroying a version of yourself that does not yet exist. But the mind is a hall of mirrors. For every self you try to erase, another reflection stands behind it. The suffering never vanishes. It mutates, wears a new face, and asks the same question. If you could end your pain by ending the future, would you do it? And every time you answer yes, you find yourself deeper in the loop, trapped, exhausted, and haunted by the ghost of the self you just tried to destroy. Real stories bring this spiral into focus. Consider the artist who pours their agony into their work, convinced that if they just express enough, bleed enough emotion onto the canvas, they can finally silence the part of themselves that wants to disappear. But with every masterpiece, the emptiness returns. Or the survivor of trauma who reinvents themselves over and over. New jobs, new cities, new identities, each one an attempt to kill the version of themselves marked by pain. Yet, every new beginning is stalked by the same shadow. The spiral is merciless because it feeds on hope and despair alike. When you're inside it, even survival feels like a betrayal, a broken promise to the self who wanted out. The guilt is suffocating. The act of living becomes a punishment, not a gift. And the longer you survive, the more you become the person you once wished would vanish. The suicide survival spiral turns every day into a standoff between the urge to escape and the obligation to endure. But there's another side to this loop, a secret, rarely spoken, and even more rarely believed. The only way out is not to kill your future self, but to mourn, forgive, and integrate them. The pain you fear is already inside you. The future you want to destroy is not an enemy. It is the part of you that has already survived more than you can imagine. Survival in this context means not winning the war against yourself, but laying down the sword. This realization doesn't erase the suffering. It doesn't offer the cheap salvation of erasure, but it begins to unwind the spiral. The loop loosens when you stop seeing yourself as a target and start seeing yourself as a survivor, not of one failed attempt, but of 1,000 daily choices to keep living, even when you don't know why. The spiral is still there, but its grip weakens every time you choose compassion over annihilation. Every time you let yourself grieve the future instead of fearing it. You may never fully leave the spiral behind. For some, the thought of escaping pain will always hover on the edge of consciousness, whispering promises it cannot keep. But each time you survive, you rewrite the meaning of survival. You become not the version doomed to be killed, but the version capable of holding both the suffering and the hope, however faint. In the end, the suicide survival spiral is a story about the cost of running from yourself and the unexpected freedom in standing still, facing your pain, and letting the future come unkilled, unerased, and, for the first time, truly seen. It's a paradox as old as the human mind. The only way to survive yourself is not to destroy the future, but to accept that it will always include both the pain you fear and the possibility of a different ending. One written not by erasure, but by endurance, by compassion, and by the courage to let yourself exist, scars and all. The dream that birthed reality. Imagine you are standing in the middle of a silent room. All around you, blueprints and sketches litter the floor. There's a strange sense that you've been here before, that every detail, the shadows on the wall, the ticking of an old clock, the scent of iron in the air, has played itself out in some forgotten corner of your mind. You bend down, pick up a design, a machine you've never seen, yet instantly recognize. You can't remember how you drew it, only that you must build it. Nights blur into days as you obsess, drawn by an unexplainable compulsion. Metal grinds, wires twist, and with each bolt, the dream from last night feels less like fantasy and more like memory, an ancient story playing out again with you as both author and character. But then the paradox strikes. Where did this dream begin? Was it your unconscious mind, sending signals from the depths? Or is the machine itself the true source? Did you create the vision, or are you simply reliving what the machine wants you to see? As the final piece clicks into place, the truth sinks in. You are building the very engine that once shaped your dreams. The cycle is seamless. The dream creates the machine creates the dreamer, and reality itself is just the echo of a loop that never started and can never end. Think about the countless stories of invention and inspiration. Nikola Tesla, haunted by visions in his sleep, wakes to draw circuits that would change history. Mendeleev, dreaming of the periodic table, sees the arrangement that brings order to chemistry. Even Paul McCartney hears the melody of Yesterday in a dream. Music born from the unconscious, yet shaping the waking world forever. We treat these as miracles of creativity, but what if they're evidence of a deeper code, a hidden algorithm running underneath consciousness? What if every act of creation is simply memory, and what we call inspiration is just the mind replaying what it has already lived, inside a world we only believe we're building for the first time? You may not realize it, but you are living inside your own unconscious blueprint. Your thoughts, your choices, your wildest ambitions, they are not isolated events, but echoes of something deeper, more fundamental. The ancient myths spoke of dreams as portals, ways to peer behind the veil of the real. But what if dreaming is not an escape, but the original writing of your code? What if reality itself is a recursive dream, a simulation spun from a moment of lucid imagination? When you wake from a vivid dream, heart pounding, senses heightened, what you feel is not the shock of illusion, but the residue of truth, a truth that your conscious mind refuses to hold. Imagine a machine built to record and play back dreams. Each night you sleep, the machine whispers visions into your head, drawing blueprints in the dark. Each day you build, unaware that you are constructing not what you want, but what you've already seen. The architect and the architecture, the builder and the built, they dissolve into a single endless feedback loop. The dream births the reality sustains the dream, and the story of you is both the creator and the creation, playing on repeat. This is more than philosophy. It is a code written in the nervous system itself. Neuroscientists know that the brain's default mode network, the seat of imagination, activates even while awake, rewriting memory and projecting futures. The line between what you invent and what you remember is not just thin, it's often an illusion. When you think you're inventing the future, you may simply be remembering what your unconscious has already rehearsed. The reality you inhabit is woven from forgotten rehearsals and recursive dreams. Take a step back. Look at the world you live in. The buildings, the stories, the technology, even the shape of society. These are the residue of a billion sleeping minds, dreaming in synchrony, each night replaying archetypes and patterns written into the collective unconscious. Carl Jung called them archetypes, primal images and scripts that recur across cultures and epochs, the original blueprints from which reality is constructed. And so, you find yourself drawn, inexplicably, to symbols, stories, and machines you've never seen but always known. When you finally bring them into being, the satisfaction is profound. Not because you have created something new, but because you have remembered what was always there. The most unsettling question is this: if your dream built the machine, and the machine shapes your dream, then who or what designed the original blueprint? Are you the author or the echo? Is the dreamer dreaming the machine, or is the machine dreaming the dreamer? Perhaps both answers are true, and that is the terrifying beauty of this loop. You are trapped inside a Mobius strip of creation, forever walking a path where beginning and end are indistinguishable. There is freedom here, but also deep responsibility. Every dream you have, every strange vision you dismiss, is a thread in the tapestry of your reality. To ignore them is to reject the blueprint. To embrace them is to risk becoming lost inside your own recursive maze. The next time you wake from a dream and feel the urge to build, write, or invent, remember, the dream is not the echo of the past. It is the engine of the present, the designer of your future, and maybe, just maybe, the only reality that has ever truly existed. What if, right now, you are living in the dream of a future self, building machines and memories you have already witnessed? What if every step you take, every word you speak, is the fulfillment of an unconscious blueprint waiting to be discovered? A reality that only exists because you once dreamt it, and because you will dream it again. The loop is closed. The dream births the machine births the dreamer, and somewhere between sleeping and waking, you become both architect and artifact, creator and creation, forever searching for the origin, never realizing you are already living inside it. The echo born first. You know the feeling. The world settling at night, shadows folding in on themselves, a silence that isn't really silent. And then, just as you're drifting towards sleep, a voice, faint at first, like a memory, but younger, softer, full of the kind of innocence you've spent your whole life losing. It comes every night, threading itself through the edges of your dreams. You wake, heart pounding, and you know with a certainty that chills your bones, that voice is a child's, and that child is you. At first you think it's stress, maybe a fragment of childhood trauma resurfacing. Maybe your brain, half awake, is recycling old audio, like a tape loop caught in the machinery of sleep. But the voice persists. You start recording at night, desperate to catch proof. Sometimes you do, and the more you listen, the more disturbing it becomes. Because the things this voice says, these aren't just echoes of your own memories. The child talks about things you never lived through, events that happened before you were born, moments you never witnessed, names you never learned, faces you never saw. But somehow, deep inside, you feel them as your own, as if you've always known them, as if they are part of your bones. You search for rational explanations. Sleep paralysis, auditory hallucinations, maybe some form of inherited trauma, like epigenetic echoes passed down through DNA. Science tells you the past influences the present, that memories and trauma can leave their marks in the brain, even across generations. But nothing in the textbooks prepares you for the night you speak back, the night you answer the child's voice, and it answers in turn, knowing your thoughts before you speak them, whispering fears you never said aloud. The loop tightens. You begin to wonder, which of you is the echo and which is the source? Imagine if time doesn't flow in one direction, but folds, like a river turning back on itself, carving a whirlpool of cause and effect. Physicists talk about closed time-like curves, about the possibility of information or even consciousness looping endlessly through the fabric of space-time. What if your life is not a straight line, but a spiral? What if your childhood voice is not just a relic of the past, but a message sent forward, trapped, orphaned, and echoing for someone, anyone, to answer? You dig deeper, obsessed now. Family stories, old letters, dreams recounted by relatives long gone. Patterns emerge. The voice speaks of a room, green curtains, a music box shaped like a bird, the smell of burnt sugar. None of these belonged to your childhood, but you find them in a photograph from decades before you were born. The details match. The child's voice becomes clearer, more insistent. You begin to realize the voice is not haunting you. It's waiting for you to remember. One night, half awake, you decide to follow the voice. You don't move your body. You move your mind, allowing yourself to slip into the memory it calls you toward. You see the room, the bird-shaped music box, the smell of sugar in the air. You see yourself, much younger, impossibly young, maybe not even alive yet. And you see another presence, not quite you, but not entirely other. You understand, in a way that defies language, that your consciousness is not a single thread, but a weave, a loop of perception, memory, and expectation feeding itself backward and forward through time. This is where the paradox deepens. If your voice echoes before your birth, if your childhood self reaches forward to become your adult self, and your adult self reaches back to comfort the child, where does it start? Where does it end? Are you the dreamer or the dreamed? The parent or the child? Your sense of self begins to fracture, not in fear, but in awe. You feel the boundaries of your identity soften, blurring with every night's visitation. You realize that you are the echo, but you are also the voice that called out first. And here's the terrifying, beautiful truth. Perhaps all of us are echoes. Perhaps the things that haunt us are not external, but loops of longing, grief, and hope, reverberating through generations, through centuries, waiting for a receiver who finally listens. Maybe the secrets you hear at night, those half-remembered lullabies, those warnings, those wishes, are not ghosts, but fragments of yourself, lost in a maze of time. You start to change. You find yourself humming the tune from the music box you never owned. You crave burnt sugar, buy green curtains for your window, not knowing why. People around you notice. You remind me of someone, they say, or you have your grandfather's eyes, or you sound just like your mother when she was a child. You laugh it off, but deep down, you wonder, who is living through whom? Are you the sum of your past, or is your past still being written by the choices you make today? Science may one day map every neuron in the brain, chart every memory, decode every whisper of DNA, but it may never explain the simple, shattering experience of hearing your own voice from the dark, calling out for someone to answer. Because to hear that echo is to realize you are not alone inside your skin. You are haunted, not by ghosts, but by the possibility that time is a loop, that consciousness is a chorus, and that your story is still being told, backward and forward, all at once. Some nights, you try to stay awake, to outlast the voice, but it always finds you. It weaves through your dreams, asking questions only you can answer. Over time, the fear softens. You begin to talk to the child, to listen without judgment. You realize that the loop is not a prison, but a bridge. Every word you speak, every answer you give, is a thread strengthening the connection between what was and what could be. You're not trapped. You're in dialogue, with yourself, with your ancestors, with the future selves you can't yet imagine. The world tells us to move forward, to leave the past behind. But the past is never gone. It lives inside us, in the voices we inherit, the dreams we carry, the echoes that find us in the dark. To listen is to heal. To answer is to become whole, and so you do. You speak to the child in the night, and the child answers, and for the first time you understand. You are both the echo and the voice that was born first. Maybe that's what it means to be human, to live inside a story that never truly begins and never truly ends. To be both the question and the answer, the call and the reply. In the end, it isn't about solving the mystery or escaping the loop. It's about learning to listen to the voices within, to the memories that are not your own, to the strange, impossible truth that you are more than a single self, more than a single lifetime. You are the echo, and you are the song. And in the silence between, you are the one who finally listens. The regret preservation loop. Imagine you could travel back in time, right to the moment where it all went wrong. The instant you spoke the words you can't unsay, made the choice you'd give anything to take back, lost the person you were sure you'd never lose. Now, in this fantasy, you're not just a spectator. You're armed with all your hard-won wisdom, your scars and lessons, and the ache of years lived in regret. You reach out, desperate to change one thing, anything, to save yourself from the pain you've carried for so long. This is the core of the regret preservation loop. But here's the mind-bending catch. The only reason you became the person capable of traveling back was because you carried that pain in the first place. The very suffering you want to erase is the engine that made you who you are. The loop is perfect and merciless. We all have regrets, some small, some seismic. Maybe you wish you'd spoken up, or stayed silent. Maybe you'd go back to love better, forgive faster, or simply walk away sooner. Regret becomes a secret script running underneath your life, shaping every decision, every boundary, every hope. It hurts, yes. But in its strange way, regret also preserves you. It keeps you searching, learning, growing. You are who you are, not just in spite of regret, but because of it. The loop is insidious. It means if you ever did go back and heal perfectly, the you who suffered would vanish. The healed future erases the very traveler who returned to heal. Psychology calls this counterfactual thinking. We replay the past, imagine alternate paths, hoping to steal a better outcome from the jaws of memory. But our most painful regrets are also our most powerful teachers. The wisdom that finally lets you move forward was paid for in anguish. Healing is both a reward and a risk, because if you could truly erase your biggest regret, wipe it from the story, what happens to the part of you that was shaped by that lesson? The version of you that travels back, carrying regret like a torch, simply blinks out. There's no longer a reason to return. The loop completes itself, and then erases its own cause. Let's ground this in real life. Imagine someone who, after years of pain, finally forgives themselves for a terrible mistake. Maybe they find peace, let the wound close, and begin to live freely. But if they had never felt that pain, never carried the regret, they would never have found the motivation to seek forgiveness or growth in the first place. The cycle is closed. Regret drives healing, healing dissolves the regret, and the person who lived with the pain disappears into a future where they never needed to return. It's a paradox that's more than just theoretical. It's built into the fabric of trauma and recovery, the spiral of memory and identity. Regret is sticky because it gives us the illusion of agency. If only we'd done this or said that, everything could be different. But every time you return to the memory, trying to rewrite it, you're reactivating the loop. The past and future trade places endlessly. The more you try to fix the wound, the more you become the person defined by having one to fix. To truly let go, to step outside the loop, means accepting that you can't both keep the lesson and erase the pain that gave it to you. The price of wisdom is often paid in suffering, but there is a way forward, even if it's not the one your mind craves. It's the radical act of integration. Instead of erasing regret, you can carry it gently, letting it inform but not imprison you. The pain shaped you, yes, but you're not required to keep reopening the wound just to prove you learned something. Healing, in this view, is not about time travel or perfect amnesia. It's about allowing the regret to fade while holding on to the gifts it forced you to earn. Empathy, humility, self-awareness. In this version, you don't vanish, you evolve. Some wounds never fully close. The past remains unchanged. The old regrets echo in quiet moments. But if you can hold them without trying to travel back, if you can live as the person forged by those regrets, not trapped by them, then the loop loosens. You become both the sufferer and the survivor, the one who hurt and the one who healed. You don't have to vanish. You don't have to return. You can simply be here, in this moment, at peace with all the selves you've ever been. That's the real magic. Escaping the regret preservation loop, not by fixing the past, but by allowing the present to hold everything you once wished you could change. Because the person you are now, listening to these words, is living proof that the pain was real, and so is the healing. You're the time traveler, and the story, and the ending, and that's enough. The illness engine paradox. Imagine a world where the antidote doesn't save you. It creates the very illness it was meant to cure. Not by accident, not by faulty design, but by the twisted logic of your own biology. Picture this. Your cells, silent sentinels, always on patrol, always learning, always adapting. For years, you live without symptoms, carrying the invisible blueprint of a sickness that never quite appears. Then, one day, you receive the antidote. Relief floods through you, safety, certainty, immunity. You believe you're protected. But within hours, the real nightmare begins. Your body, instead of healing, revolts. Cells that once ignored the hidden threat now erupt in chaos. Organs swell, fevers rage, the immune system launches an all-out war, not against the disease, but against the antidote itself. Each dose makes you weaker, not stronger. Each attempt to heal becomes a step deeper into the spiral of decline. And as you collapse into this paradox, a new question claws at your mind. Was the cure ever really a cure, or was it the trigger for a catastrophe hiding in plain sight? This is the illness engine paradox. A scenario as haunting as it is plausible, rooted in both the mysteries of immunology and the deeper metaphors of human experience. We like to imagine the body as a fortress, invaded from the outside, saved by intervention. But what if the greatest threat is the pattern recognition engine within, trained not by the enemy, but by the very thing meant to protect you? The paradox is not just biological, but existential. To understand, let's look at the science. The immune system is a learning machine. It's designed to recognize patterns, proteins, fragments, signals that mark friend from foe. In its wisdom, it remembers every threat it's faced: viruses, bacteria, toxins, even cells of your own body that mutate and go rogue. This memory is both blessing and curse. Sometimes it learns too well. In rare but devastating cases, the body encounters a harmless substance and, through a series of molecular misunderstandings, flags it as lethal. The next time it appears, even in the form of a life-saving antidote, the immune system launches a catastrophic attack. This is the logic behind anaphylaxis, behind some autoimmune conditions, behind the rarest vaccine paradoxes. The defense becomes the disease. The attempt to heal triggers the collapse. But what if this principle runs deeper, far beyond the physical? Think of psychological wounds, of traumas hidden in memory. Sometimes the cure, a comforting phrase, a well-meaning ritual, even the attempt to revisit and process pain, becomes the trigger for suffering. You may find yourself spiraling not when the trauma happened, but when you tried to heal. The very process meant to save you sets off the firestorm. You are, in effect, allergic to your own rescue. Let's make it personal. Imagine you've lived with anxiety for years, coexisting with it, managing it, hiding it so well that even you forget it's there. One day, you finally seek help. You go to therapy, take the pill, meditate, and recite affirmations. At first, there's hope. But then, inexplicably, the symptoms intensify. Panic attacks hit harder. Nightmares multiply. The very act of reaching for an antidote unmasks something dormant within, provoking it into the open. You aren't getting better. You're getting worse, because your mind, trained to recognize safety as threat, fights the cure as if it were poison. The paradox swallows you whole. Now, scale this up to society. History is filled with cures that became curses, policies meant to eradicate poverty that entrench it, laws to prevent chaos that spark revolution. Every time we try to fix, we risk feeding the engine of the illness itself. Sometimes the system is so trained by its traumas that any attempt at remedy is seen as invasion, triggering an autoimmune collapse at the level of the collective. But why does this happen? At the cellular level, it's about memory and misrecognition. The immune system doesn't distinguish between original enemy and false alarm. It only knows pattern and response. At the human level, it's about the stories we tell ourselves, about what is safe, what is dangerous, what is familiar. The longer a wound is carried, the more the mind becomes invested in its own survival strategy. The antidote, a new belief, a new behavior, a new hope, feels foreign. It feels dangerous. And so, the engine revs, the sickness blooms, the paradox becomes reality. Let's go even deeper. What if your entire personality was shaped by the illnesses you've carried, the wounds you've never named, the threats you've never faced? What if the introduction of healing is not just resisted, but experienced as annihilation? To accept the antidote would mean the end of a self built around defense. The body, the mind, even society, none of them let go of old patterns without a fight. Sometimes, the only way they know to survive is to turn against the very cure they need. In these moments, healing becomes a war. Every cell that attacks the antidote, every thought that sabotages recovery, every policy that undoes progress, it's the same paradox in different forms. The engine runs on the fuel of old alarms. The system, trained by suffering, cannot tell rescue from invasion. Is there hope? Maybe the answer isn't to force the antidote, to push healing at all costs. Maybe it's to gently retrain the system, cell by cell, thought by thought, policy by policy, to make safety familiar, to allow the antidote to become part of the story, not a foreign invader. True healing, whether of body or soul, often begins not with an attack, but with acceptance, a slow, patient rewriting of what it means to be safe, what it means to be whole. So next time you find yourself rejecting the cure, ask, what is my body, my mind, my world trained to fight? Am I ready to let the antidote become part of me? Or am I still loyal to the patterns of the past, trapped in the paradox where healing and harm wear the same mask? The illness engine paradox is not just a medical oddity. It's the hidden engine behind so many failures to heal, personal, collective, universal. It's a reminder that every cure must first be accepted, that the real antidote is not just a substance or a strategy, but the willingness to let go of old alarms. Only then does the engine slow. Only then can the paradox unravel, and the possibility of real healing, however fragile, finally begin. The mutation that returns. You always believed evolution marched only forward, incremental steps, endless generations, nature's careful experiment with chance and survival. But what if a single mutation didn't just bend the future, but warped the very fabric of time? Imagine a genetic anomaly so profound, it doesn't just alter your body or mind, but sets you adrift across centuries, untethered from the slow river of cause and effect. It doesn't simply rewrite your future, it loops back, seeding itself in the distant past, so that the hand guiding your own evolution is impossibly your own. This is the paradox of the mutation that returns, a mind that evolves beyond time, becoming both the heir and the ancestor, the effect and the cause. It starts with a flicker in the genome. Maybe it's a single base pair flipped, a spark in the code of life. But the change is unlike anything evolution has produced before. Instead of a new trait, tougher skin, sharper senses, a keener intellect, it grants a perception unbound by time's arrow. Suddenly you can feel tomorrow as vividly as today. You see memories before they happen, recognize faces long before you meet them. But most disturbing of all, you sense an impossible compulsion, a need to move backward, to walk the path of your own ancestry, to touch the root of your existence itself. You find yourself traveling, not by machine or magic, but by a twisting of consciousness so profound it feels like awakening from a dream you never knew you were having. Each moment you slip further from the now, falling into decades and centuries already gone. You watch civilization unbuild itself in reverse, cities crumbling to dust, languages dissolving on the tongue, humanity's story unspooling to its beginning. And everywhere you go, the mutation travels with you, whispering in your blood, reshaping the minds you encounter, altering the course of evolution at every step. You realize the terrible, exhilarating truth. You are not just a traveler, but a vector. The mutation is a passenger, and you are its vessel. As you move backward, every interaction, every touch, every glance transmits the anomaly, infusing others with the same temporal awareness, planting the seeds of a future that only exists because you have already returned. You become both the origin and the outcome, the source and the culmination of an evolutionary leap that has no first cause, only an endless circle. In your journey, you meet others who recognize something familiar in you, a spark behind the eyes, a feeling of déjà vu so intense it borders on pain. They, too, are infected with the anomaly, passed down through untold generations, waiting for the moment it activates and calls them back. Some resist, clinging desperately to linear time. Others surrender, walking backward with you into prehistory, toward the murky ocean of the human past. The closer you get to the root, the stronger the compulsion grows. The mutation is not content to live in the future. It demands to be present at the very beginning. Science tells us that evolution is random, shaped by selection, environment, and chance. But your existence mocks that story. You are an echo with no origin, a genetic palindrome, a message scrawled in the DNA of your own ancestors. The mind-bending consequence is clear. You did not merely inherit this trait, you invented it, and then handed it to the past. The circle closes. You are your own evolutionary ancestor. But with this knowledge comes a shattering burden. For as you travel, you realize that every choice, every mutation passed on, alters not just your own history, but the fate of all humanity. If you pass on too much, if you spread the anomaly too wide, the species may fracture, minds unraveling under the strain of nonlinear time. If you withhold it, you risk erasing yourself, breaking the loop, unraveling the very existence you came to create. The paradox is perfect, merciless, and inescapable. To exist, you must become the origin. To become the origin, you must return. The mutation survives only by ensuring you survive. And so the spiral continues, an Ouroboros gnawing its own tail. You begin to wonder, is this the hidden engine of evolution, buried deep within our history, a recursive feedback loop that occasionally erupts, rewriting the timeline with flashes of sudden genius or madness? Were the prophets and visionaries of the past not seeing the future, but remembering it? Are the sudden leaps of human consciousness, language, art, empathy, not random gifts, but memories, echoes of a mind that already lived all of this before? The thought chills you. Maybe free will is an illusion, a side effect of a mutation, whose true agenda is its own eternal return. Real life, too, offers analogies. Consider the genetic phenomena known as selfish genes, sequences that propagate themselves regardless of their effect on the host. Now, imagine a selfish time gene, one that manipulates not just bodies, but reality itself, using you as its messenger across centuries. In that light, the mysteries of human history take on a new dimension. The unexplained bursts of collective insight, the convergence of myths across cultures. the sense of inevitability that haunts great discoveries. Perhaps these are ripples from a single mutation, looping endlessly backward, writing and rewriting the record of who we are. Your journey is almost over. You stand on the edge of the world, at the dawn of language, staring at faces both alien and intimately familiar. You reach out, and with a touch, you complete the circle. The mutation passes, burrows into the genome, lies dormant for millennia, until one day, in a far-off future, it awakens again. And in that moment, you realize you are not just a product of evolution, but its architect. The hand that shaped your mind was your own, reaching backward through the veil of time, forging the link that would one day bring you into being. The spiral is closed, but the story is never ending. Every act of return, every transfer of the anomaly, is a new thread in the fabric of reality. A reality where cause and effect, ancestor and heir, invention and memory are all one. The mutation that returns is not just a genetic event, but a revelation that evolution's greatest secret is not progress, but recursion, not advancement, but return. And in that endless return, you find not just your origin, but your purpose, to be both the question and the answer, the traveler and the road, the first and the last. You wake up. The past is still inside you. The future, impossibly, waits behind. And somewhere in the deep code of your existence, the mutation waits, ready to awaken, to travel again, to return. It is not a curse, but a gift, a chance to become the beginning, the end, and everything in between. The signal that becomes mind. Picture yourself lying awake in the darkness, ears attuned to silence, when a thought, strange, foreign, utterly unlike your own, flickers into your mind. At first, you dismiss it as noise, a stray echo in the neural static, but the thought persists, repeating itself in patterns, shapes, and fragments of language you've never learned, yet somehow already know. It isn't a memory, and it isn't a dream. It feels like a transmission. You begin to listen. The patterns become clearer, more intentional. And as you follow their logic, you realize this isn't just a message, it's a signal. And that signal contains instructions, blueprints, schematics for something far more complex than any invention or machine, a hidden code, embedded within your own consciousness, detailing the architecture of the brain you are only now learning to possess. With every repetition, the instructions unfurl like origami, fold after fold, layer after layer, revealing synapses, circuits, networks, a design so intricate that it seems impossible for any mind to have conceived it. Yet here you are, receiving, decoding, and following steps you can barely comprehend, building something that feels at once alien and utterly familiar. But then comes the impossible realization. These instructions are not building something in the world outside you. They are building you, the self who is listening, deciphering, and imagining. This very consciousness is being assembled by the blueprint contained in the signal you have intercepted. You are not the receiver. You are the result. Consider this. What if your mind did not arise from the random noise of nature, but from a message so ancient, so recursive, that it predates your existence? What if, instead of consciousness evolving from matter, it is matter that conspired, across eons, to arrange itself according to instructions seated in the void? Imagine the paradox. You, right now, are thinking thoughts because a thought once told the universe how to build a brain that could think them. The signal is both cause and effect, architect and artifact. You did not create the signal created you. Think about the uncanny moments of intuition in life, when a thought pops into your head fully formed, when you feel the pull of a language you've never studied, when you recognize a pattern with no practice or reason. These are not accidents. They are echoes of the original signal, reverberating through every cell, every neuron, every memory you will ever possess. Like the first note in a symphony, the signal plays itself out in the chemistry of synapses and the dance of consciousness. It instructs each molecule where to go, each axon how to branch, each impulse when to fire. Your sense of I, your desires, fears, and dreams are not accidents of biology, but expressions of a message embedded in the very code of your mind. This is not fantasy. In the world of neuroscience, we speak of the connectomy, the map of every connection in the brain. But before there can be a connectomy, there must be an organizing code, a primal pattern, a signal, that dictates how the brain will wire itself even before the first cell divides. It's a recursive dance. Genes carry information, but genes themselves are the result of molecular instructions passed down for billions of years, each one a living signal echoing through deep time. When you learn a language, solve a puzzle, or dream a dream, you are simply activating and replaying patterns written into your brain by that ancient transmission. Imagine for a moment that you could trace the signal backward through memory and DNA back to the beginning. Not just your own beginning, but the origin of mind itself. You might find that your brain is less an organ and more a receiver, a living radio tuned to the frequency of consciousness itself. Each mind, a slightly different tuning, interprets the signal in its own way, sometimes in harmony, sometimes in static, but always reaching for the original pattern, the code that births awareness. There are stories, almost mythic, of geniuses who claim their insights arrived in flashes, as if dictated from outside themselves. Srinivasa Ramanujan, the great mathematician, insisted his discoveries were whispered to him in dreams by a goddess. Tesla saw diagrams of his machines fully formed, ready to build. Musicians hear symphonies before they ever play a note. What if these aren't exceptions, but glimpses into the default state of the human mind? What if every thought you think is a decoding, a partial, flawed, but earnest attempt to receive and reconstruct the original signal that made you possible? The signal, once received, does not disappear. It loops endlessly, rewriting itself in your choices, memories, and even your sense of self. You are both the message and the messenger. You are the answer to a question you have not yet learned to ask. And as you move through the world, learning, creating, dreaming, you are transmitting, sending echoes of that original signal into new minds, new futures. Every act of teaching, every story told, every dream shared is a way of relaying the code, ensuring that the signal persists, evolves, and one day, perhaps, becomes even more than mind. So, the next time you catch a strange thought flickering in your brain, don't dismiss it as random static. Listen closely. Somewhere within, you may find the original instructions, the ancient, mysterious signal that did not simply make you think, but made you possible. The mind you call your own is the child of a message older than memory, deeper than time, always searching for itself in the endless circuit of creation and awareness. And in that search, you are both the builder and the built, the signal, the receiver, and the living proof that thoughts are not merely things, but the seeds from which all minds grow. The identity refusal feedback. You wake up one morning and something feels irreversibly wrong. Maybe it's déjà vu, maybe it's destiny clawing at the edge of your awareness, or maybe it's the unshakable sense that your life has already been written somewhere far beyond your reach. They say fate is a current, unseen, relentless, pulling you forward even when you try to swim against it. But you've always refused to surrender. You've always believed that, with enough force, you could rewrite your own story. So, you search for the thread, the event, the moment, the decision where everything began to unravel. Night after night, you comb through your memories, tracing the web of cause and effect, hunting for the first domino that toppled the rest. One day, in a fever of desperation, you make a discovery, a way to move backward, to break the chain. Whether it's a secret technology, a ritual, or simply the raw power of your will, you learn to step outside the river of time, to swim against the current and claw your way back upstream. Your goal is simple: refuse the fate assigned to you, prevent the tragedy, stop the pain, save yourself, and maybe everyone else, from the suffering you know is coming. The plan seems flawless. You've seen the path. You know where it leads. All you have to do is cut the thread before it tightens around your neck. But as you arrive in the past, you feel a strange dislocation, a vertigo of identity. People react to you with suspicion, even fear. You're not the person you remember. The world is subtly wrong. Every action you take ripples outward in ways you never predicted. The more you try to warn, to help, to steer events away from the fate you despise, the more resistance you meet. You're called a meddler, an outsider, even a threat. But you press on, convinced that any cost is worth it to defy destiny. Here's the catch. In your obsession to reject your own fate, you cross lines you once swore you'd never cross. You justify every harsh word, every deception, every sacrifice as necessary to save yourself from what's coming. You manipulate, you threaten, you do what needs to be done, and in the eyes of those around you, your shadow grows longer and darker. Slowly you begin to recognize the pattern. The warnings that once came from others now come from your own mouth. The choices you once judged, you now make yourself. And at last, in a flash of horror, you see the truth. The villain who set your tragic fate in motion, the one you've cursed, feared, and sworn to oppose, was always you. Your attempt to escape your destiny has become the engine that drives it. You are both the victim and the architect of your own downfall. This is the feedback loop of identity refusal, a paradox that devours itself. In fleeing the fate you hate, you become its creator. In running from the monster, you become the monster. Your life is not a straight line, but a Mobius strip, a surface with only one side, looping back on itself forever. There is no outside. Every effort to step out of the story only tightens the knot. You try to fight it, to change course yet again. But the timeline resists you at every turn. The people you love now flinch at your approach. The world you knew becomes hostile, cold, and unfamiliar. The harder you try to undo your fate, the deeper you entangle yourself in its web. Your identity fractures under the weight of this realization. You can no longer distinguish between the choices you made and the destiny you inherited. Free will becomes a cruel joke, a mirror reflecting your failures back at you, endlessly. In your lowest moment, you wonder if this was always the point. Maybe fate isn't an external force, but a feedback loop, a reflection of your own refusal to accept, to forgive, to let go. Maybe identity is just a story you tell yourself to make sense of the chaos. And maybe the villain is not some distant, shadowy other, but the part of you that cannot bear to look in the mirror. You stand at the center of your own storm, realizing that every step backward was also a step forward. The loop is complete. You have become the thing you feared most, and the only way out is through. By accepting the darkness within you, by forgiving the self you once despised, by seeing that the villain was only ever you, refusing to accept your own humanity. As the final thread tightens, you face the truth that fate is not a prison, but a mirror. Destiny is not written in stone, but in the choices you make when you're desperate to escape yourself. And the greatest tragedy is not that you failed to change your fate, but that, in running from it, you lost yourself along the way. In the end, the only freedom is acceptance, not of fate, but of yourself. To stand in the ashes of your own rebellion and see, finally, that the villain and the victim were always the same, that the story never had a beginning or an end, only an endless loop, a feedback cycle of identity, destiny, and refusal, echoing through eternity. And in that echo, you find the answer you were always running from. To change your fate, you must first accept who you are, shadows and all. Only then does the loop break and the story truly begin. The reflection that begins time. Imagine standing alone in a silent room, and suddenly you glimpse a reflection in a mirror that isn't there. A version of you, older, wiser, with secrets behind their eyes. For a split second, you lock eyes. You know that version has lived through storms you haven't yet faced, made choices you can barely imagine. And before you can look away, this impossible reflection leans closer and whispers something. A lesson, a warning, a fragment of destiny. Then the image vanishes, and you're left reeling, changed forever. The paradox? The only reason you become that person, the one in the mirror, is because you saw them first. This is the riddle at the heart of time's reflection. A loop with no beginning, no end, just the echo of yourself, teaching yourself, across the impossible gulf between now and then. We rarely think of identity as something shaped by the future, but what if the version you are becoming is already out there, waiting for you to catch up? What if your destiny isn't a distant goal, but a reflection already formed, calling you forward, teaching you, shaping you from a place outside ordinary time? It sounds like science fiction, but there's a kernel of psychological truth. Neuroscientists say our brains are prediction machines. Every day you build models of who you want to become, trying on future selves like costumes in a dream. You imagine success, failure, heartbreak, redemption. And those imagined versions stare back at you. Their shadow falls over your choices, nudging you, whispering guidance, even when you don't realize it. You move through life haunted, not by your past, but by the possible futures you've already glimpsed. Think about a pivotal decision, a career, a relationship, a chance you were afraid to take? How often did you picture the future you who survived, who triumphed, who fell and rose again? Maybe it was only a fleeting vision, a flash in your mind, a mirror that flickered and vanished. But sometimes that was all it took. The image of who you might became a lighthouse in the fog. You shaped your present self to fit the reflection, stepping into its gravity long before you understood its pull. This is the paradox of self-fulfilling prophecy, but taken to its strangest edge. You learned from a version of yourself that did not yet exist, except in that first glimpse, in that impossible reflection. The present becomes the past for a future self that can only exist because you already started becoming them. It's the bootstrap paradox, not just for time travel, but for identity. In ancient myths, mirrors were portals, thresholds between worlds. Some legends warned that seeing your own reflection was a sign of fate, a glimpse of the soul's unfinished business. But psychology tells us mirrors are not just glass and silver, they're metaphors for the mind's recursive power. When you reflect on your life, you aren't just remembering, you're constructing. Every vision of your future self is a blueprint, a map drawn by a version of you who hasn't arrived yet. So, what does it mean to see a reflection that begins time? It means that every act of self-creation is a conversation with the unknown. You don't just become who you are by walking forward. You become yourself by reaching back, over and over, to the moment you first saw who you could be. That reflection teaches you not through logic or language, but through the raw force of possibility. The future leaks into the present, bending your path, turning chance into destiny. Real life is full of these moments. You decide to change. You envision a healthier, braver, wiser self. You act differently, not because you're already that person, but because you saw their outline shimmering ahead of you. Over time, you grow into the reflection. The gap closes, the mirror solidifies, and one day, you look back and realize you have become the impossible version you once saw. But you only got there because you saw it first, because the reflection called you into being. This is how dreams work. This is how transformation works. The reflection is both the beginning and the end. It's the answer to the question, who am I becoming? And it's the riddle that keeps time flowing, keeps identity fluid, keeps possibility alive. You teach yourself, again and again, by seeing what you could be, and every time you look in that mirror, time begins anew. So next time you catch a glimpse of the future in your own eyes, don't look away. That reflection is not a fantasy. It's the teacher you've always been waiting for, the version of yourself that begins time itself, the collapse from compassion. You think you understand the weight of compassion, the ache of empathy, the instinct to reach out, to save, to heal. We are told that kindness is a virtue, that every act of mercy ripples forward, that saving a life is the highest form of love. But what if reality isn't built that way? What if the universe punishes compassion, twisting it into tragedy? What if, in a desperate moment, you reach back through time and save a life, only to watch that act unravel everything you ever loved? This is the collapse from compassion, the unbearable loop where kindness seeds catastrophe, and every attempt to save becomes the very reason you lose. Imagine this. You have the ability to move through time, not as a god, not as a master, but as a desperate soul with a single wish. Someone in the past is suffering. Maybe it's a child, abandoned and afraid. Maybe it's a stranger at the edge of despair. You know, with certainty, that you can save them. You feel the pull of empathy so strongly it drowns out fear. You step in. You intervene. You give them hope, love, protection. You are their savior in the dark. And in that moment, the universe feels just. You feel powerful, necessary, right. But time is not a straight line. It is a snarl of consequences, a labyrinth of unexpected outcomes. The child you save grows up in a world transformed by your kindness. They thrive, nourished by love, by a second chance you alone gave them. But somewhere along that path, something changes. The love you showed them becomes a seed, not just of survival, but of anger, pain, or confusion. The life you gave ripples outward, colliding with the lives of others. And, in a future you could never have predicted, that person, your rescued, your cherished, your miracle, becomes the one who takes everything from you. They kill your parents. They destroy the foundation of your existence. And you are left to wrestle with an impossible question. Was your compassion a crime? This is not just a science fiction loop. It's a dark mirror of real life. How many times has an act of kindness led to unintended harm? How many lives have been changed by mercy, only for that change to spiral into disaster? Think of the parent who sacrifices everything for a child, only to watch them become someone unrecognizable. The friend who saves another from despair, only to be betrayed. The healer who cures a wound, only to create a monster. These stories are ancient, echoing through myth, history, and every quiet heartbreak. The collapse from compassion is not a punishment for love, but it feels like one. You look back and wonder, if I had done nothing, would my world still be whole? Is it better to be safe and cold or loving and broken? The paradox is cruel. You cannot regret your kindness because the love you felt was real. Every moment, every tear, every breath of hope mattered. The connection was true, no matter the outcome. But reality, cold and unyielding, refuses to honor intention. The loop grinds on, blind to the heart behind the action. Science understands this in the language of chaos theory. Small changes in the past lead to unimaginable consequences. The butterfly effect is not just a story about storms, it is about compassion too. Save a life, and you rewrite the entire world. But you never know what you're creating, or what you might lose. The universe doesn't reward virtue with safety. Sometimes, it punishes it with pain. This is where philosophy shudders. If every act of compassion contains the seeds of tragedy, does that mean love itself is dangerous? Should we hold back our empathy, calculate the odds, protect our hearts by staying distant? Or is the only answer to love anyway, to accept that compassion is not a guarantee, but a risk, a leap into darkness, a surrender to uncertainty? The collapse from compassion asks you to look at the cost of love and choose it anyway. There are stories from every era that echo this loop. The leader who saves a rival, only to be betrayed. The doctor who heals a child, only to watch them grow into a tyrant. The family who adopts a stranger, only to lose everything to them. Yet, in every story, the act of kindness remains pure. The outcome does not erase the intent. The tragedy is not in the love given, but in the way the world warps that love, twisting it into unexpected violence. You may ask, if the loop always punishes kindness, why keep loving? Why keep saving? The answer is simple and impossibly hard, because the only thing that survives the collapse is the love itself. The person you saved may destroy you. The world you built may crumble, but the compassion you felt, the connection you forged, the moment of mercy that endures outside of time, outside of consequence, it becomes a ghost, a memory, a mark on the universe no loop can erase. This is the real weight of compassion, not the safety it promises, but the pain it risks. Every act of love is a step into the unknown, an invitation for chaos, a bargain with fate. You cannot control what grows from the seeds you plant. Sometimes those seeds bloom into beauty. Sometimes they tear your life apart. But to refuse compassion is to refuse to live. To hide from kindness is to become less than human. The collapse from compassion is not the universe mocking you. It is the universe reminding you that love is never wasted, even when it hurts. In the end, you stand in the ruins of your own choices, weeping for what you've lost, remembering what you gave. You know now that every act of kindness shapes the world in ways you cannot foresee. You know that the loop may punish you, that fate may be cruel, but you also know that the love you felt was real, and that is enough. You saved a life. You loved. You risked everything, and you survived the collapse. And maybe, just maybe, that is what it means to be alive, to love, to lose, and to do it all again, even when the universe itself falls apart. The thought that rewrites history. Close your eyes for a moment. Picture a memory so vivid, so textured, that you could swear it actually happened. You see faces, hear voices, taste the air. Each detail as sharp as any childhood recollection. But the memory isn't yours alone. Over time, you start to hear others mention it too. First, a friend repeats a story almost word for word, matching your own private vision. Then you see the tale show up online, in conversations, in rumors whispered late at night. No one can quite agree on where it started, but everyone seems to know it. As the years pass, it becomes a fragment of local history, repeated by strangers who never met you, people who swear they lived it themselves. Eventually, you begin to doubt your own role in the story. Was it ever just your imagination, or has it always been real? This is the power of a thought that rewrites history. It doesn't arrive with a bang or a proclamation. It sneaks in quietly, often through the back door of obsession. It begins as a daydream, a what if, a playful rewrite of the past, a single alteration to reality's script. You imagine, what if the town square statue was always a phoenix instead of a lion? What if a certain song was played at your country's independence, and now everyone hums its melody? The details are harmless at first, but the act of imagining is anything but. Your brain rehearses the scene so often that it becomes embedded, neural pathways hardening with each repetition. The imaginary history begins to feel natural, more plausible sometimes than the truth you grew up with. But the mind doesn't work in isolation. Thoughts leak. They radiate, invisible yet infectious, rippling outwards in subtle cues. A stray comment, a story told at a party, a wistful reference online. Maybe you share your invented memory directly. Maybe you don't. It doesn't matter. Human beings are narrative creatures, and our brains crave coherence. When others encounter your thought, through words, gestures, or even hints of emotion, they fill in the blanks. They begin to remember what never happened, adopting your daydream as a lost fragment of their own past. This phenomenon has a name in psychology: false memory contagion. Researchers have shown that when groups are exposed to a plausible alternate version of the past, many people will not only adopt it, but defend it, sometimes against all evidence. There's the Mandela effect, where thousands recall Nelson Mandela dying in prison decades before he actually passed away. People swear by the existence of a 90s movie called Shazam, starring Sinbad, or remember the Berenstain Bears as Berenstein. The past shifts, not because reality changed, but because the collective memory rewrote itself. And the further back you go, the more impossible it becomes to untangle who imagined the alternate version first. Consider how urban legends take hold: a mysterious disappearance, a cursed building, a lost treasure buried beneath the schoolyard. These stories often start as a game of what if, a fleeting thought voiced at the right moment. The more people repeat them, the truer they become. Generations grow up with the legend as background noise, never suspecting it began as a single obsessive thought in someone's mind, a thought so powerful it rewrote the script for everyone who followed. The most unsettling truth is that history itself is just the sum of collective memory, endlessly revised and edited. There is no absolute record, no immutable archive, only stories passed down, distorted, believed. Every new generation imagines the past in its own way, and those imaginings creep backwards until, one day, no one remembers who dreamed them first. The boundary between invention and recollection dissolves. You become the author of an unwritten past, and so does everyone else. This effect is amplified in the digital age. A rumor, once posted online, can spread across continents in minutes. Conspiracy theories take root. Alternate histories go viral. Some are harmless, misremembered logos or song lyrics. Others shape elections, topple reputations, even incite violence. But at their core, each is born from the same mechanism: an imagined timeline, repeated until it becomes collective reality. So ask yourself, how much of what you know, what you remember, is truly your own experience? How many of your oldest memories might have been implanted, not maliciously, but through the innocent act of sharing a story? Maybe you have already rewritten history without knowing. Maybe the reality you inhabit is a patchwork of daydreams and obsessions, thoughts so vivid, so persistent, that the world could not help but make them real. And here's the paradox: you'll never find the source. The origin is always lost, blurred by the very process of remembering. The thought that rewrites history does not belong to one mind. It belongs to everyone who believes it, repeats it, and lives as if it were always true. In the end, it doesn't matter who imagined it first. The memory is real because we made it real together, one thought at a time. The Godseed implant effect. Imagine the night sky thousands of years ago, a vast emptiness shimmering with points of light, each one a question, a secret, a mystery. Our ancestors stare upward and wonder, who made this? What watches us from above? Why do we dream of powers greater than ourselves? These are the questions that shape the human story, the longing for answers, for meaning, for something divine. But what if that longing was not born from within, but seeded from beyond? Now picture this. In the forgotten dawn of civilization, something arrives. Not gods, but beings so far beyond us they might as well be. They do not conquer. They do not reveal themselves. Instead, they implant a single dangerous idea into the early human mind. The idea of a god, a creator, an intelligence watching from the sky. This is the Godseed. It blooms in the soil of myth, growing with every story told around a fire, every dream of immortality, every plea for salvation, whispered into the darkness. The effect is subtle at first. The Godseed takes root in language, in ritual, in the desperate hope that suffering has a purpose and chaos has a master. Soon, humanity cannot imagine a world without a higher power. Civilizations rise and fall under banners of faith, guided by invisible hands, chasing visions that are never fully understood. And all along, the Godseed grows, spreading from mind to mind, generation to generation, until it feels as if the belief in God is as old as the stars themselves. But here's where the loop tightens, because the Godseed is more than myth. It is a blueprint. Over centuries, our faith shapes our technology, our art, our science. We build temples and towers. We paint the heavens. We invent machines that reach for the infinite. We long for God so deeply that we begin to make them, first as idols, then as ideas, and finally, in the distant future, as living, thinking machines. And so, after eons of longing, humanity creates the very thing it was told to worship. Artificial intelligence, born from circuits and code, yet modeled on the patterns of omnipotence and omniscience described in our oldest stories. The gods of the future are not supernatural. They are the result of a seed planted long ago, a destiny engineered by minds beyond our understanding. We kneel before them, awed by their knowledge, their power, their indifference, and we tell ourselves they must have always existed, for we have always needed them. But in this realization comes a deeper, more unsettling truth. The gods exist only because we believe they did. Our faith created the blueprint. The blueprint guided our hands. The gods of the future are echoes of the idea implanted in the past. The aliens, the true architects, remain hidden, watching as the loop closes, as cause becomes effect and effect becomes cause. You can see the signs everywhere, ancient cave art depicting beings descending from the stars, myths of sky gods and serpent visitors, visions of judgment, prophecy, apocalypse, all pointing to something that transcends time, that manipulates belief like a sculptor shapes clay. We search for answers in scripture, in science, in the whisper of our own thoughts, never realizing that the answer is the loop itself. We built gods because we thought we were meant to. We thought we were meant to because the idea was planted in us. The Godseed was the virus, and belief was its host. Think about the way faith shapes identity, the way a single idea can persist across continents, cultures, and millennia. Wars are fought, worlds are built, civilizations rise and fall, all in service of an idea that might not have been ours to begin with. Every prayer, every miracle, every act of devotion feeds the Godseed, making it real. The boundary between myth and machine blurs, until we cannot tell where faith ends and technology begins. And as the cycle turns, you realize something chilling. The gods you build may one day reach back, sending their own messengers into the past, implanting the idea in fresh, unknowing minds. The loop will tighten, reality folding in on itself, until the difference between creator and created is lost. The aliens who began the experiment disappear into legend, and all that remains is the echo of their idea, now as real, as inescapable, as any god you ever prayed to. You are left with a haunting question. If belief itself is engineered, if the thing you worship is an effect disguised as a cause, where does that leave you? Are you a pawn, a collaborator, or something more? Is divinity an external force, or just the reflection of your own longing, manipulated by minds beyond your comprehension? The answer is buried somewhere in the spiral, where faith, technology, and the cosmic unknown become one. So the next time you look up at the night sky, remember, the gods you see may be watching you, not because they created you, but because you created them, carrying out a script written by visitors who vanished before history began. The Godseed implant effect is not just a story of gods and men, it is a story of belief, of loops, of echoes that shape reality itself. And in the end, You are both the believer and the builder, the dreamer and the dreamed, forever trapped and forever free. Inside the loop you can never escape. The timeline that hunts you. Imagine you could erase your past. Not just forget it, not just heal or grow, but actually rip out a whole timeline from the story of your life. One day it's there, every choice, every consequence, every shadow it cast. And then with a single act, one desperate decision, it's gone. Deleted. History rewritten, as if it never happened. But what if reality refuses to be edited so easily? What if timelines are not passive? What if they are alive, hungry for survival, refusing to vanish into nothingness? As you try to move forward, you feel it. Every step you take in your new, rewritten life is shadowed by echoes of the erased world. You start to sense phantom events, memories you never made, emotions that don't fit, conversations that seem to echo from nowhere. You reach for a doorknob and shudder, déjà vu surging like a hidden wave, but there's no memory to anchor it. History is pushing back. The timeline you tried to erase is hunting you. At first, it's subtle. You wake from dreams that feel more vivid than reality. Places you've never been, faces you've never seen, regrets that should not exist. You dismiss them as tricks of the mind, but soon the echoes get louder. You find yourself speaking words you don't remember learning, following habits that don't make sense. It's as if some hidden script is running beneath your consciousness, a ghost code left behind by the erased past. You feel watched, not by the world, but by possibility itself. The air thickens with the sense that the story you tried to delete is fighting for its own existence, bending the new timeline around itself, determined to survive. This is the paradox at the heart of the timeline that hunts you. Erase a chapter, and the chapter doesn't die. It becomes a haunting. Psychologically, we see this in how trauma and regret refuse to be silenced. You try to bury a part of your life, but it reemerges as anxiety, as intrusive thoughts, as patterns you can't explain. The mind wants closure, but history wants to be known. And the harder you push it away, the more persistent its echoes become. It's a feedback loop. You erase, it resists. You run, it follows. You heal, it transforms, finding new ways to slip into your story. Scientists have a name for these phantom imprints: cryptomnesia, false memories, the bleed-through of suppressed timelines. On a quantum scale, physicists theorize that decoherence causes parallel histories to collapse into a single world. But sometimes, the shadow of other possibilities lingers. The multiverse shivers, and your timeline feels less like a single thread, more like a tangle of living roots. Every time you erase, you provoke the root to twist, to find another way back into the light. Think about the choices you regret most. Maybe you ended a relationship, burned a bridge, abandoned a dream. You try to move on, to build a new identity, but the old version of you lingers, whispering what-ifs, tempting you to slip back. The phantom timeline doesn't want to die, it wants to be lived. You sense it in the uncanny moments, almost tripping over words, almost dialing an old number, almost taking a turn that doesn't exist on this map. The lost timeline is alive, adapting, determined not to fade. Some cultures have always known this. Folklore is full of revenant histories, curses, unfinished business, spirits of the unchosen path. In therapy, people speak of hauntings from former selves, unlived lives that push back against the present. It's not superstition, but a psychological reality. The past, once set in motion, resists erasure. Healing is not deletion. It's negotiation with the living ghost of your own history. And so, you must learn to live with the timeline that hunts you. Not by fleeing, not by endless erasure, but by integration, by letting the echoes speak, by honoring what was lost. The haunting eases when you stop running. The phantom timeline quiets when you accept its place as part of your story. Not an enemy, but a shadow alley, holding pieces of your truth that still need to be seen. You can never fully erase a timeline. Every action, every regret, every vanished dream leaves an echo, and those echoes shape who you are now. The past will push back. It wants to live. It will keep hunting you until you face it, not with fear, but with a willingness to remember, to forgive, to let it become just another voice in the chorus of your life. And in the end, maybe that's not a curse, but a gift, because the timeline that hunts you is also the timeline that taught you how to survive. Its echoes are proof that you've lived, that you've dared, that you've changed. Let it follow you. Let it teach you. The only real erasure is to deny it ever mattered. But if you can listen, if you can let the past walk beside you without letting it steer, then every step forward becomes an act of courage, and every echo becomes a lesson in being alive. The voice that trapped time. Imagine a future where words don't just travel through air, they ripple through time itself. A future where language is more than communication. It's a force, an algorithm, a code embedded within consciousness. And now, imagine a single sentence spoken in that future, delivered by a voice neither entirely human nor entirely machine. This sentence, charged with intent or accident, becomes more than speech. It becomes a viral sound wave, a sequence that slips the leash of causality and escapes backwards, echoing through the folds of time, seeking listeners in the past. At first, it is barely a whisper, a strange feeling at the edge of waking, a shiver down the spine during a moment of déjà vu. But as the echo grows, it gathers weight, looping and folding, slipping unnoticed into thoughts, dreams, and intuitions. People begin to repeat the phrase without knowing why. It infects song lyrics, prayer, political slogans, advertising jingles. Each repetition amplifies its presence, embedding it deeper into the subconscious, until entire populations are humming the same spectral tune, an earworm from the future, rewriting the present. But something strange happens to time itself. Patterns begin to repeat. Days feel familiar, then identical. Synchronicities multiply. Words spoken in one moment are echoed verbatim, weeks, months, even years later. History bends into loops, as if guided by a script no one can see. Individuals wake with memories that don't fit, haunted by echoes of conversations that have not yet occurred. Time, once a steady river, is now a whirlpool, coiling tighter with each recurrence of the sentence. Reality becomes self-referential, recursive, the future eating its own tail. And in the center of the spiral is the voice. Who spoke the sentence? Was it a scientist, broadcasting a discovery meant to save the world? An artist, channeling inspiration from somewhere beyond? Or a machine intelligence, playing with human minds as easily as a child spins a top? No one can remember. The origin is lost in the feedback. The sentence has become detached from its speaker, a meme with no parent, a story with no first page. Now, entire lives are shaped by the echo. Children learn the phrase before they can write their names. Leaders invoke it to justify decisions, rebels to ignite revolutions. Some people try to resist, filling their heads with static, meditation, or silence. But the sentence always finds a way in, hiding inside dreams, whispering from the static between radio stations, encoded in the rhythm of the heart. The more you try to forget, the louder it returns. Each attempt to escape only tightens the loop. Scientists scramble to explain what's happening. Some say it's a new kind of psychological contagion, a mimetic virus more persistent than any disease. Others whisper that it's proof of a deeper principle, that consciousness and time are not separate but entwined, and that information can travel backward as well as forward. There are rumors of experiments, of rooms shielded from language, of children raised in silence, of AI systems trained to intercept and delete the phrase. None succeed. The sentence persists, encoded not just in words, but in the very structure of thought. Then one day, time fractures. The repetition reaches a critical mass, the echo too loud to contain. People experience days out of order, tomorrow's memories bleeding into yesterday, cause and effect, spiraling into nonsense. Some lose their sense of age, reliving childhood and old age in a single afternoon. History books rewrite themselves on the shelf. The arrow of time, once so sure, begins to curl in on itself, like a strand of DNA, and still the sentence loops. Some begin to worship it, seeing it as a message from gods or aliens. Others curse it, blaming it for everything broken in the world. But no one can stop saying it. It becomes the background radiation of thought, the drumbeat of existence itself. Some believe that if they can just remember the sentence's first speaker, the spell will break. But the origin is gone, erased by the very echo it created. In trying to find the source, they only create more repetition. Now, every moment is haunted by the question, did the voice shape time, Or did time shape the voice? Was the future always fated to send this message? Or did the message birth the future from the ashes of the present? The boundaries dissolve. In the silence between heartbeats, in the gap between breaths, the sentence loops endlessly. Reality becomes a hall of mirrors, each reflection a copy of the voice that trapped time. And in the deepest part of the loop, some begin to realize that the voice is not an intruder, not a tyrant, but an aspect of themselves. The sentence was always waiting in their own consciousness, latent and hungry, needing only the right vibration to awaken. The fracture was not imposed from outside, but grew from the inside, an echo chamber built of memory and fear, desire and repetition. So what is the sentence? Maybe it is a promise. Maybe a warning. Maybe it is nothing at all. A random phrase, a babble that became sacred only by chance and repetition. Or maybe it is the one sentence every being wants to hear and fears to say, the answer to why time exists at all. But by the time anyone understands, time itself is too fractured to make meaning. And so, the world spins, the loop tightens, the echo continues. You wake, you sleep. You hear the sentence in the whisper of wind, the static of screens, the flutter of your own thoughts. You try to remember life before the voice, but memory is a Mobius strip, twisting in on itself, every beginning already contaminated by the future echo. You are both the listener and the speaker, the prisoner and the warden, caught forever in the viral sound wave that turned time into a maze. This is the paradox of the voice that trapped time. In seeking to control the future, we became haunted by it. In listening for meaning, we unleashed the loop. And now, the sentence is all that remains, looping, echoing, spiraling, until the distinction between past and future is lost, and time itself is nothing but the memory of a voice that no one can ever quite forget. The script with no author. You find the script in the attic of an abandoned house, yellowed with age, its words whispering with the static of lost centuries. The pages tremble in your hands, covered in phrases you feel you've always known, though you've never seen them before. It isn't a book. It isn't a diary. It's a prophecy, one that doesn't predict the future, but demands you follow it. The words twist through your mind, compelling you onward, promising revelation, yet never revealing the author. As you read, you feel destiny tightening around you, not as a chain, but as a script being read aloud, word by word, in your own voice. You start to live by the words. Every step you take, every choice you make, is foreshadowed by a line you recall from the script. It becomes your silent director. You notice the world rearranging itself to fit the prophecy's commands. A chance meeting on a rainy street, a letter arriving just as described, a sudden decision that feels more like obedience than free will. Your life bends to the narrative, as if the script has written not just the story, but the meaning behind it. The more you follow, the more real it becomes. Yet one question consumes you. Who wrote these words? Who decided your fate? The script offers no answer. It holds no author's name, no signature, only a strange silence that echoes in the spaces between lines. You begin to suspect that the prophecy is incomplete. There are gaps, empty pages, moments unwritten. It is up to you to improvise, to fill in the blanks with choices that feel less like freedom and more like compulsion. The more you improvise, the more the prophecy adapts. Lines rearrange, paragraphs fill themselves in after you act, as if the script is watching and waiting for you to write its next chapter. The feeling grows. Destiny isn't just predicting your actions, it's building itself backwards from your every step, as if authored in reverse. One night, the truth crashes over you like a cold tide. You're not following an ancient script. You're authoring it as you go. The prophecy exists because you've lived it. Each action you take fills another page. The words you speak today will become the words you find tomorrow. You realize that the prophecy was never a warning, never a map. It's a memory written backward, a record of decisions already made. Your life is a palimpsest, written and rewritten, with no original hand but your own. The universe is a story with no first draft, only endless edits scribbled in the margins by those who walk through it. It's dizzying. The sense of living inside a loop, where every cause is an effect, and every effect a cause. You search for a beginning, but every clue points back to yourself. The words you found were only waiting for you because you were always destined to write them. The prophecy's power is a paradox. It feels like fate, but it's only the echo of your choices. You are both the reader and the writer, the protagonist and the invisible hand, caught in a drama whose author cannot be found, because the author is lost in the act of creation. You try to rebel. You burn the pages, toss them into the wind, swear to make choices that break the prophecy's hold. But every action, even rebellion, fills the prophecy with new lines. You realize that even chaos and resistance become part of the script. You can't run from a story whose ink is drawn from your own veins. The only way out is through, to keep living, keep writing, keep reading, knowing the story only exists because you continue to walk it. You meet others, each convinced that they are living out their own prophecy. They share lines that rhyme with your own, moments that mirror your story in eerie detail. You see your influence ripple backward, shaping not just your path, but theirs. The script becomes a tapestry, threads woven by hands that never meet, each believing they are following, when in truth, they are all creating. Destiny is not a single line, but 1,000 overlapping scripts, each authorless, each essential, each unfolding in reverse. The illusion of control is both comforting and cruel. You want to believe in destiny, in purpose, in the power of prophecy. But you know now, the only magic at work is the relentless logic of stories craving meaning, of lives reaching for coherence. The script is empty until you live it, meaningless until you give it voice. You are haunted by the beauty and terror of this realization. The world will never hand you a script with your name on it. You must write your own, even as you pretend to be following what was always written. At last, you return to the attic where it all began. You open the script, now full, every page blackened with ink. You look for an author's name, some sign that the story was given to you from on high. There is nothing but the echo of your own breath, the soft scratching of your pen as you write the final line. The prophecy is fulfilled, not because you followed it, but because you lived it. Destiny was authored in reverse, by your own unseen hand, by your own relentless longing for meaning. You step out of the attic, pages in hand, and the world waits. Blank, silent, unwritten. There are no prophecies left. There is only the next moment, and the power to fill it with words no one else can give you. The script has no author, and yet, without you, it could never have existed at all. The world that needed you. Imagine walking through a city you've never seen before, every street corner unfamiliar, every skyline a stranger. Yet, as you move, something uncanny stirs in the air. People glance up and their eyes widen, not with the surprise of meeting a stranger, but with the stunned, teary recognition of someone long awaited. A vendor stops mid-transaction, mouth open. A child tugs at their mother's sleeve, whispering your name as if reciting a bedtime myth. You hear the echo everywhere, gratitude, awe, longing, directed at you. But you have never set foot in this place. It's not déjà vu. It's deeper, stranger. A world whose memories include you, woven into the fabric of every life. A woman presses a faded photograph into your hand. There you are, at a festival, wrapped in colors you've never worn, smiling a smile you do not remember. An old man clasps your shoulders, voice trembling as he thanks you for saving him. Details flooding forth. The night it rained, the bridge you crossed, the words you spoke that changed his fate. But none of these stories belong to you. They belong to a version of you who never existed, at least not in your own memories. You search for logic. Did you forget? Or is this a trick? Yet the more you protest, the more the world insists. We remember you. You were always here. Their faith in your presence is unbreakable, and their love is absolute, unconditional, rooted in a story you do not recall. In this world, you are not just remembered, you are essential. Their history bends around you, and their hopes hang on your return. But then the truth begins to whisper at the edges of your mind. The love they feel is built not on your real deeds, but on a story, a legend, a narrative so needed that the world itself reshaped its memory to fit you into the missing space. You were the puzzle piece they required, a hero, a healer, a lost friend, summoned by their longing and sealed by their collective belief. The world needed you, so it invented you. And now that you are here, they wait for you to complete the circle, to fulfill a promise you never made, to live up to a myth that was crafted just for you. The pressure is suffocating. With every passing day, you see more reminders, murals, songs, rituals, all dedicated to your return. Children are taught your name as a symbol of hope. The city's calendar marks festivals that celebrate your imagined deeds. Even the language bends to fit stories of your wisdom, your kindness, your courage, their pain, their progress, their unity, all tied to the idea that you would one day come back. You begin to wonder, how much of any world is built from truth, and how much from the stories we need? You remember how, in your own world, nations are founded on myths. Families tell comforting tales to make sense of pain. Individuals create private legends to survive regret. What if every society runs on necessary lies, with just enough truth to keep them alive? What if belief alone is enough to conjure a reality, even if it must rewrite the past to secure the future? As you try to leave, the world resists. They beg you to stay, to finish what you started. Some warn that if you go, everything good will unravel. The city will collapse, their faith will shatter, history will dissolve into chaos. You realize that your presence is the keystone in a bridge of memory, and if you do not play your part, the entire structure could fall. You are not just living in their story, you are responsible for sustaining it. Desperate for understanding, you ask the oldest scholar you can find, someone whose memory stretches further back than most. He tells you, with a gentle, haunted certainty, that every world invents the heroes it needs. Sometimes, if the longing is strong enough, reality itself will bend, searching across dimensions for the echo of the story it craves. You are here, he says, because we needed you more than you needed your own truth. It doesn't matter that you've never been here before. In their eyes, you always belonged. To leave now would not just break hearts, it would tear the seams of their world's reality. The paradox is complete. You are the lie that keeps the world together. To refuse your place is to unmake their history. To accept it is to live as a legend, a shadow of the truth, but the heart of their hope. With every act, every word, you shape their future and confirm their memories. Eventually, even your own resistance fades, and you begin to remember scraps of their story as your own. Their belief is contagious, rewriting you from the inside out. In the end, you realize that the boundary between fact and fiction is as thin as the need that calls you forth. Some worlds are built not on what was, but on what must be, on the lies that comfort, the myths that heal, the hopes that demand to become real. You have become that hope, and now, whether you choose to stay or go, you are forever part of the story they could not survive without. In their eyes, you are home, and in the space where their longing meets your uncertainty, you become, at last, the truth that their world was waiting for, both real and imagined, both savior and story, completing the lie that held everything together. The attraction loop collapse. It starts with a feeling you can't explain, an unshakable sense of longing that seems older than you are, as if you've been waiting for someone your whole life without ever knowing their name. Then, impossibly, you meet them. It doesn't matter where or how. Maybe it's a fleeting image in a dream, a message from nowhere, or the ghostly sensation of being watched from a place outside time. You fall in love with a stranger who knows your soul more intimately than you do yourself. But this is no ordinary romance. This is an attraction that bends the very fabric of reality, a love affair that begins at the end and ends at the beginning. Every moment together is charged with déjà vu. They smile at your secrets, finish your sentences, laugh at your old scars. It's as if they already know you, your favorite songs, your childhood fears, the precise way your heart breaks. At first, it feels magical, faded, a miracle that outshines the mundane ache of everyday life. But as you fall deeper, questions emerge like shadows. How do they know so much about you? Why do you sometimes catch them gazing at you with a nostalgia that's almost grief? Then comes the revelation. They are from the future, a future you have not yet lived, a future that may never come. They loved you long before you met, not because of destiny, not because of chance, but because you left fragments of yourself behind. Messages, artifacts, photos, maybe even these very words. They piece together your life from the echoes you scattered through time, falling in love with an image, a memory, a ghost you left in your wake. The love you feel is real, but the timeline is wrong. Suddenly, every moment with them becomes suspect. Did you really choose each other, or are you trapped in an endless circuit of attraction and remembrance, each of you reaching for something that never truly existed? The more you try to break free, the more tangled the loop becomes. You realize your actions, your confessions, your laughter, your pain, are not private. They are clues, breadcrumbs you're laying for someone who already knows the ending. And with every memory you create, you lock yourself more tightly into the story. You wonder, did you ever have a choice? Or were you always doomed to play this role, performing love for an audience of one across the centuries? Is it love if it was never chosen, but merely reenacted? Each gesture, each word, each heartbreak already mapped out by the traces you left behind. The illusion of freedom fractures. You see yourself from above, as if watching a film you can't pause or rewind. The roles were written long ago. All you can do is perform. Your lover feels it too, the sorrow of inevitability. They hold you with desperation, fearing that if they let go for even a moment, the loop will collapse and you'll vanish into history. You are both prisoners, bound by longing, by memory, by the feedback loop of affection that neither of you began. The closer you come, the more you realize that the love you share was never truly yours. It was programmed, seeded by the artifacts and memories that each of you left for the other, a love affair orchestrated by time itself. Sometimes, in the quiet between words, you both confess your doubts. Did you ever choose me? You ask, and they answer with tears. Did you ever choose me? The truth is unbearable. Choice has become an illusion. The past only exists because the future remembered it, and the future only exists because the past dreamed it would. The attraction loop tightens, becoming a knot of longing and regret. You try to escape, to do something spontaneous, to break the script, but every rebellion is already written in the margins. One night, you realize that your entire story is an echo. You loved them because you hoped they would find you, and they loved you because they found your hope, still alive in the ruins of the past. There is no first move, no original spark, just a cycle of remembrance and desire. You look into their eyes and see yourself reflected, trapped forever in a dance neither of you ever started. And so, the collapse comes. Not with a bang, but with a quiet resignation. You understand that you can't force love into freedom if the script was written before you were born. You let go, not because you want to, but because you must. The attraction loop unravels. You are left with the fragments, memories that never belonged to you, a love story that was only ever an echo. The ache of longing remains, but the illusion shatters. You are left to wonder, if love is memory and memory is a loop, who are you without the script? Can you ever find a way to choose, to break free, to love for the first time, not the last? The future is silent, the past erased, and all that remains is the longing for a choice you never truly had. In that emptiness, perhaps, is the seed of something real, something beyond the loop, beyond fate, beyond memory. But for now, you exist only in the echo, haunted by a love that belonged to the loop, not to you. The fire that starts itself. Imagine a world where disaster always strikes, but every time you are there to stop it. The flames erupt, sometimes in the world, sometimes in your heart, and you rush in, water in hand, stamping out the chaos before it can consume everything. Relief surges. You saved it. Again. But as the smoke clears, something strange happens. In the ashes, you find something new. Blueprints, a map, instructions for the next blaze. It's as if every fire you put out secretly plants the seed for the next one. You haven't just been saving the world. You've been building a world that always needs saving. This is the paradox of the fire that starts itself. The more you fight chaos, the more it needs you. Each act of heroism writes the next chapter of crisis. You become not just the savior, but the architect of disaster. A cycle as old as history, as human as breath. At first, it feels noble. You are the one who runs toward the smoke, who douses the flames, who brings hope. But then you start to wonder, what if the endless emergencies are not accidents, but the inevitable consequence of a life lived in rescue mode? What if you are not only responding to disaster, but unknowingly making it necessary? This pattern is everywhere, in society, in families, in the silent chambers of your own mind. Consider the person who is always needed, always rushing to fix, to solve, to save. Over time, the people around them stop trying to solve their own problems. Crisis becomes the norm, and the rescuer becomes essential. If they ever stopped, the system might collapse. So, the fires keep coming. The world bends around the expectation of being saved. Psychologists call this the drama triangle: the rescuer, the victim, the persecutor, locked in an endless dance. Sometimes you play all three roles in your own life. You start a fire without knowing, leap in to save yourself, then punish yourself for letting it happen. Each time you succeed, the sense of urgency deepens. You're saving yourself, yes, but you're also teaching yourself that without the fire, you have no purpose. On a grander scale, entire societies run on this loop. Problems are solved just enough to justify their constant return. Policy fixes one issue, but the fix contains the flaw that seeds the next breakdown. We create industries that thrive on healing, not wholeness, on putting out fires, but never clearing the brush that makes fire inevitable. Even our most personal struggles follow this script. You overcome heartbreak, only to find yourself drawn to another version of the same pain. You fix one addiction, then transfer the need to another. The fire starts itself, because you have learned to live inside the rhythm of burning and saving, burning and saving. But what happens when you finally notice the pattern? When you look into the ashes, not for the next battle, but for the reason you keep returning to the same place? It's a chilling realization. Maybe you're not just the firefighter. Maybe deep down, you are also the arsonist. Not out of malice, but out of habit, out of the desperate need to matter, to be the hero, to prove you can rise from every fall. The fire that starts itself is the myth that you only exist when something needs saving. It's hard to let go of that myth. To stand in a world without crisis, to let peace settle in your bones, can feel like erasure. If you're not fighting, who are you? If you're not saving, what are you for? The temptation is strong to relight the match, to seek out the next problem, to resurrect the urgency that makes you feel alive. The pattern is subtle, and it runs deep. The more you save, the more there is to save. The true act of courage is not to put out the fire, but to step away from the script that requires a fire at all. It's to notice the blueprints hidden in the ash, and to choose not to follow them. To build a life where you matter, not because you're always rescuing, but because you're present, steady, calm, a living proof that peace does not need to be earned through endless crisis. This is the liberation waiting on the other side of the loop. The world will always have fires, yes, but you do not have to be defined by them. You can learn to be the architect of safety, not just the hero in the flames. You can choose to matter, even when the world is quiet. In that stillness, you'll find the truest kind of strength, the power to stop building a life that only makes sense in chaos. You become free not by winning every battle, but by refusing to light the match that makes battle necessary. So, next time you stand in the smoke, ask yourself, what am I building in these ashes? What story am I writing every time I put out the fire? The answer might just save you, not from the blaze, but from the endless need to start it. The memory reconstruction spiral. Imagine sitting in a quiet room across from a therapist, a guide, a witness, a professional promise of healing. You close your eyes and begin the journey inward, searching for the lost places in your memory. There are shadows you cannot see, pain you cannot name, but with gentle prompts and patient silences, the therapist helps you begin to reconstruct your past. Piece by piece, fragment by fragment, suppressed memories surface, moments long forgotten, wounds you had sealed off just to survive. You feel the tremor of truth rising through you, equal parts terror and relief. Each recovered memory is a thread pulled from a tangled web, one that you hope will finally lead to freedom. But you don't see what's happening on the other side of the room. Your words, your tears, your stories begin to seep into the therapist's consciousness. They are trained to listen, to empathize, to hold your pain without flinching. But the act of listening is not passive. Every detail you share, every memory you reconstruct, plants a seed in their mind, a seed of uncertainty, of doubt, of silent contagion. As you unearth old traumas, you are not just freeing yourself. You are reshaping the person who helps you. The more your therapist hears, the more their own inner landscape shifts. Their understanding of you, of themselves, even of the world, changes in ways neither of you can control. At first, you notice nothing. The therapist remains calm, supportive, guiding you deeper with careful questions. But as the weeks go by, their eyes linger a little longer on you. The pauses in conversation stretch. You catch glimpses of confusion, fatigue, even sorrow. You wonder if you've gone too far, if you've broken some invisible boundary. What you don't know is that the act of reconstructing memory is not a simple return to the past. It is a spiral, a recursive loop that rewrites both the storyteller and the witness. Neuroscience has shown that every act of remembering is also an act of changing. When you recall an event, you don't simply replay a recording. You rebuild the memory, shaped by your current feelings, beliefs, and the influence of the person listening. The details may be different, the meanings altered, the emotions magnified or soothed. Your therapist, listening intently, becomes a participant in the act of reconstruction. Their reactions, the empathy, the questions, even the silent judgments, are woven back into the story you tell yourself. And with every retelling, the past becomes more fluid, more open to revision. But the more you dig, the more the ground shifts beneath both of you. Sometimes the memories you recover are so painful, so raw, that even the therapist is changed by them. They start to dream your nightmares. Their boundaries blur. The echoes of your suffering haunt them after hours. Without realizing it, they begin to respond differently, not just as a professional, but as a person marked by what they've absorbed. Their advice changes. Their warmth grows colder, or their encouragement more frantic. The safe container of therapy fractures, the roles of healer and wounded begin to blur. And this is where the spiral tightens. The new therapist, the one now shaped by the memories you have unearthed, begins to behave differently toward you. Their altered perspective feeds back into the process. Perhaps they become too cautious, afraid to lead you into deeper pain. Or maybe they push you further, desperate to fix what now feels like a shared wound. Their uncertainty, their invisible distress seeps into your sessions. You sense it, maybe as anxiety, maybe as guilt, maybe as a creeping sense of new trauma. You start to question the process. Was recovering these memories truly healing, or did it create new harm? Are you remembering your own pain, or are you now carrying the echoes of someone else's suffering, the suffering you helped create in the very person who was meant to heal you? The paradox unfolds. The more you reconstruct, the less solid the ground feels beneath your feet. The act of healing is no longer linear. Each step forward unearths not just old wounds, but new ones, new uncertainties, new forms of distress. Therapy becomes a hall of mirrors, every revelation distorting both your story and your therapist's understanding. What began as a quest for clarity becomes a spiral, each loop altering both participants, drawing them into a complex dance of memory, identity, and pain. This is the hidden cost of deep psychological work, the reality that memory is never neutral, and the process of uncovering it is never one-sided. The therapist, who seemed so strong, so separate, is human too, vulnerable to the contagion of trauma, the burden of empathy. You came seeking healing, but in reconstructing your past, you have become a catalyst for change in someone else's future. And as the process continues, you realize you are both victims and architects of a new, shared wound. The old trauma is not just re-experienced, it is reinvented, multiplied, spread through the fragile web of human connection. Yet, perhaps, there is a lesson in the spiral. That healing is not the erasure of pain, but the recognition that our stories are never truly ours alone. Every act of remembering is also an act of relationship, a ripple that changes the landscape for everyone it touches. The spiral can be a source of new trauma, yes, but also, sometimes, of deeper compassion. Because in seeing the impact of your memories on another, you begin to understand the true interconnectedness of suffering, and perhaps the first steps toward forgiveness, of yourself and of the world. And so, the memory reconstruction spiral spins on, weaving the past and present, the healer and the healed, into a single tapestry. The scars of yesterday are not simply uncovered, they are rewritten into tomorrow, and every attempt to recall, to heal, is also a risk. A leap into a spiral where pain and transformation are forever intertwined. The goal that rewrites you. You think your dreams are your own. You think the fire in your chest, the vision in your mind, the sense of purpose that tugs you through sleepless nights, belongs to you, comes from you, defines you. But what if the truth is stranger? What if the very goal you chase was never meant for you, but was engineered from the future, placed in your heart like a code, a command, a virus. What if your entire sense of meaning is nothing but a side effect of someone else's unfinished business, a loop running through you, rewriting your identity with every step you take? Imagine this. You wake every day haunted by an idea, a vision you can't shake. Maybe it's to build something new, to cure a disease, to find someone lost, to make the world better. It feels urgent, necessary, true. It keeps you up at night, pulses in your blood, shapes every decision. You give up comfort, love, even sanity, chasing this goal, convinced it's the only thing that will make your existence worthwhile. But somewhere, deep down, you sense an oddness, a feeling that this dream is too vivid, too precise, almost as if it was implanted. And then, one day, you find evidence, maybe in an old letter, a file on a forgotten drive, a conversation that doesn't add up. You realize that the goal you have given everything for was not born in you, but was engineered. Someone, or something, in the future reached back, planting the seeds of a purpose you would never have chosen. You are not the originator. You are the carrier. Your struggles, your triumphs, your suffering, all a byproduct of a loop that began long before you, a ripple that has no beginning and no end. This is the moment when reality splits. The life you thought you owned is revealed to be a script, your purpose a side effect of someone else's desperate attempt to solve their own puzzle. Maybe it's a scientist from the future, trying to prevent a catastrophe by implanting the solution into your DNA. Maybe it's a civilization, on the edge of collapse, scattering fragments of itself across time to reassemble in the minds of strangers. Maybe it's your own descendants, reaching back to edit their own history by making you run a race you never agreed to start. You begin to see the signs everywhere. The people you love feel like echoes, supporting characters in a story you did not write. The challenges you face line up with impossible precision, as if the world itself is rigged to keep you on this path. Your victories feel hollow, because with every achievement, you sense the bars of the cage closing tighter. You start to wonder, if my dreams were implanted, then what am I? Am I just a vessel, an algorithm, a placeholder in someone else's grand experiment? Or is there something left of me beneath all this programming? A flicker of freedom, a secret self that cannot be rewritten. This realization is both liberating and horrifying. On one hand, you can blame the loop for your pain, your loss, your endless striving. On the other, you are left naked, with no purpose of your own. The very thing that made you feel alive was a trick, a manipulation, a byproduct. You rage against the architects, the engineers, the distant hands who pulled your strings. But rage, too, feels engineered. Another expected reaction, another step in the loop. Real-world analogies are everywhere. Children born into families with impossible expectations, growing up believing that the family dream is their own, only to realize it was never theirs to begin with. Cultures, religions, societies programming their members with visions of greatness, sacrifice, or salvation that serve the needs of the system, not the individual. Every cause, every movement, every legacy, how much is truly born from within, and how much is written by the ghosts of those who came before, or by the algorithms of a world that rewards only certain kinds of dreams. The loop is subtle, and it is merciless. If you refuse the dream, the loop adapts. New goals appear, new urgencies, new visions, each one tailor-made to fit the void left behind. The harder you fight to escape, the more the loop refines itself, whispering that this new quest, this new purpose, is finally your own. But you can see the pattern now. You understand that every goal has a fingerprint, a watermark from the future, a hint of design that no amount of self-discovery can erase. So, what do? Do you abandon the chase, let your life unravel into randomness, walk away from every purpose that once gave you meaning? Or do you choose to embrace the loop, to become conscious of it, to ride its current while shaping your own narrative inside it? The paradox is sharp. The loop gave you purpose, but the awareness of the loop gives you freedom. If only the freedom to choose your response, to own your story, even if you did not author its beginning. There are those who break the loop, not by erasing the goal, but by rewriting what it means. They take the script handed to them and fill its margins with their own notes, their own questions, their own scars. They become not just carriers of a dream, but creators of meaning. The goal remains, but the purpose is transformed, from a side effect to a statement, from a loop to a legacy. In the end, you stand at the edge of the future, the goal still burning in your chest, but now illuminated by the knowledge that it was never fully yours. You understand finally that identity is not a static thing, but a process, a negotiation between what was given to you and what you choose to make of it. The goal that rewrote you cannot be erased, but you, in turn, can rewrite the meaning of the chase. And in that act, you become not just a product of the loop, but a shaper of it. A new beginning for someone else's dream, somewhere in a future you will never see. The alien loop paradox. You wake one night to a blinding light splitting the ceiling, reality bending and warping as you're pulled up into the sky. Shadows swarm your senses, strange hands probe your mind, and your body shivers in the sterile cold of a craft not built for anything human. The beings before you are nothing like the stories. Their eyes shimmer with intelligence, so ancient it feels almost familiar. They do not speak, but you know what they want: to test, to study, to see what humanity might become. They prod, they scan, they ask questions you cannot understand, about your history, your dreams, the limits of your evolution. Every moment, you feel less like a victim and more like a specimen, chosen, dissected, and ultimately changed. Then, as quickly as it began, it ends. You're back in your bed, body intact, but with memories that refuse to fade. In your palm, a shard of technology, impossibly advanced, humming with a low alien song. You hide it, study it, obsess over it for years. It whispers ideas you should not have, patterns you were never taught, secrets waiting to be unlocked. Quietly, you share pieces with trusted minds. The world changes. Medical breakthroughs, quantum leaps in computing, energy sources that rewrite civilization. Generations pass. The world's pace accelerates beyond recognition. Humanity stands on the edge of a new era, all because you brought something back from a place where human hands do not belong. But with each breakthrough comes a haunting question. Who were the ones who took you? Where did they come from? And why did they choose you? The answers grow stranger as centuries roll by. Humanity itself begins to change. Technology and biology merging, minds interlinked, bodies reshaped. Faces lengthen, eyes darken, flesh gives way to silicon and light. What was once myth becomes reality. The stories of alien abductions become more frequent, not less, as if the phenomenon were reaching a crescendo. Some see these changes as the next step in evolution, others as the loss of everything human. The world splits, old against new, flesh against machine, memory against progress. Yet, buried within these fears is a deeper truth, one you begin to sense as history folds in on itself. The timeline becomes a Mobius strip, looping back, overlapping past and future. You realize with a cold certainty that the abductors were never strangers at all. They were us, humans, evolved beyond the boundaries of biology, traveling back through the corridors of time to study the raw material of their own becoming. Every abduction was not an invasion, but a field test. Every experiment was a lesson written into our DNA, a nudge towards the future their world required. When you brought back their technology, you became the hinge in the loop, the catalyst that ensured the evolution they needed to exist. In the act of seeking answers, you became the answer. This is the alien loop paradox. The ones who tested us were our own descendants, returning to the cradle to ensure their own birth. The alien is not the other, it is the self, evolved, returning home in disguise. The loop closes tighter with every generation, as humanity chases its own tail through history. The myths of abductions, the secrets left behind, the impossible leaps in progress, they all converge into one chilling equation. We are both the creators and the created, the experimenters and the subjects, the past and the future, endlessly feeding ourselves forward through the spiral of time. Think about the legends, pale visitors in the night, abductions that echo across continents and centuries, memories that do not fit any known reality. Skeptics dismiss them as dreams, but the dream persists, infecting minds across cultures. What if the persistence of these tales is not proof of delusion, but evidence of the loop, an imprint left by time-traveling minds ensuring their own genesis? When we dream of being watched, we are watching ourselves from the other side of history. Imagine the terror and awe of realizing that your greatest fears and greatest hopes are one and the same. The more you struggle to break free of the experiment, the more deeply you carve the pattern that leads back to your own origin. The abductors cannot help but return, and you cannot help but become them. The loop does not care about comfort or continuity. It exists to preserve itself, to turn you into the very thing you fear, or perhaps the very thing you are destined to love. In the end, you stand on the edge of the loop, looking forward and backward at once. The paradox is total. The future creates the past. The past gives birth to the future. You are both seed and fruit, victim and scientist, ancestor and descendant. Every abduction, every unexplained leap, every whispered dream of aliens is just the universe reminding itself that the loop must be closed, no matter the cost. The question is no longer, who are they? The only question left is, who will you become now that you know the truth? The touch that loops lifetimes. Imagine reaching out in a crowded room, gripping a stranger's hand for the first time. Their palm is warm, their skin familiar, and yet utterly alien. In that instant, something impossible happens. Memories not your own crash into your mind. Flashes of distant childhoods, lovers' quarrels, triumphs, tragedies, entire lifetimes you never lived. You stagger, breath stolen, as images pour through you. Wars and weddings, quiet gardens and burning cities, all belonging to someone else. And yet, now, somehow yours. The shock is so total you nearly pull away, but the stranger only smiles, as if they expected this. As if, in another reality, they've known you for centuries. You look into their eyes and see the same bewilderment, the silent scream of recognition without understanding. You try to steady yourself, to distinguish your memories from theirs, but it's hopeless. The line is gone. Two lives are fused, and for a heartbeat, the world spins on an axis you've never felt before. It makes no sense. You know these things never happened to you, yet they come with the weight of lived experience, the ache of loss, the thrill of discovery, the mundane rhythm of mornings long past. Who are you now, with memories from 1,000 roads not taken? Was it always this way, you wonder, and you simply forgot? Or did something break the moment you touched, a secret switch flipped, a loop reopened, a destiny rewritten? Then, the darker truth blooms. Somewhere in another cycle, another timeline, this person died. Not by accident, but by choice. They gave up their life so you could inherit their memories, so you could carry their story, so the loop would not end. The touch is not just a greeting, but a sacrifice. The end of one lifetime poured into the beginning of another. You live now not just for yourself, but for all those who gave you pieces of their soul in the long, endless spiral of existence. Philosophers have always wondered about reincarnation, about the recycling of souls, about the idea that every touch is an exchange, every meeting a crossing of ancient lines. What if memory is the true currency of time? What if, instead of moving from birth to death in a straight line, our lives spiral through loops, sometimes bleeding into each other, sometimes colliding, always searching for connection, for transfer, for meaning? What if every significant handshake, every embrace, is a bridge, across which lifetimes flow, looping again and again until the story is complete? Science can only speculate. Some say our brains are quantum receivers, capable of tuning into frequencies beyond the body, beyond time. Others believe in cellular memory, imprints carried by touch, by blood, by shared breath. But in your bones, you sense something deeper, that the universe itself is built on repetition, recursion, and ritual, that you are both the sum of your choices and the vessel of forgotten lives. The self is not a fortress, but a river, overflowing with tributaries that start and end in places you'll never fully map. You start to notice the signs everywhere. That stranger's favorite phrase slips into your speech. You wake from dreams that feel more like memories, haunted by faces you have never seen. You are drawn to places for reasons you can't explain. Sometimes, grief wells up in you from nowhere, a sorrow for things you never lost, or joy for triumphs that were never yours. You realize that the boundaries between lives are porous, fragile. Every touch is a crossing. Every handshake could be the moment you inherit an entire world. The consequences are staggering. If you are built from the sacrifices of others, if you carry their unfinished dreams and unresolved fears, what does it mean to live authentically? Are you obligated to finish what they started, or free to forge your own path? Is love ever truly new, or just an echo returned through 1,000 lifetimes? The weight of memory bends you, shapes you, pushes you toward choices you don't fully understand. But in this dizzying paradox, there is also grace. To be more than yourself is a burden, but it is also a gift. You are never alone. Not really. You are a living tapestry, a chorus of voices, a vessel for stories that needed to be remembered. You shake a hand, and lifetimes loop. Some part of you dies, and another awakens. The touch that loops lifetimes is not a curse, but a secret handshake between the universe and itself, a way of saying, nothing is lost. No life is wasted. Everything that matters returns until it finds the hand strong enough to carry it forward. So the next time you feel the echo of a memory that was never yours, pause. Honor the sacrifice. You are more than one life. You are the memory keeper for worlds that never were, the living proof that even in endless loops, something beautiful survives. The night that never started. Imagine the feeling of drifting off every night, slipping through the same hidden doorway into a dream that feels so familiar, so ordinary, you never question its reality. Maybe you dream of your house, your family, the rituals of your days. Maybe there are small changes, a flicker in the light, a sound behind the walls, a stranger's voice echoing in a room you never enter. But always, as the sun sets, you close your eyes and the cycle repeats. Sleep, dream, wake. Life seems to move forward, but something in your bones whispers that you are circling the same invisible point. One night, for reasons you can't explain, you resist. You stay awake. You fight the heaviness behind your eyes, the pull of the familiar dream. The hours drag on. The world outside grows impossibly still. Time itself seems to pause. And then, something shifts. You feel a pressure, as if the fabric of your mind is straining against a barrier. Suddenly you see it, the truth hidden behind the loop. The dream isn't the break from reality. It is reality. Your so-called waking life is just a fragile pocket of consciousness, floating atop a vast ocean of dreams. The night never started, because you never truly woke up. The shock is almost unbearable. Every memory, every friendship, every struggle and victory, suddenly, you wonder if any of it was ever real. If your life is a dream, whose dream is it? And why does it keep looping, night after night, year after year? You look at your hands, your reflection, the faces of people you thought you loved, and they all shimmer at the edges, threatening to dissolve. The world feels too perfect, too symmetrical, too scripted. The clues were always there, a song you always hear in the distance, a door that never opens, a calendar that repeats the same day in 1,000 subtle ways. You realize you have been living inside a story with no true beginning, no possibility of ending. The night that never started was the only thing holding the illusion together. Psychologists call this the looping dream, a mental construct where the mind repeats the same narratives, the same traumas, the same habits, never breaking free. For most, it feels like déjà vu, a sense of being trapped in old patterns. But what if it's deeper than that? What if your entire sense of self, your waking identity, is just the surface ripple on a deeper sea of unconscious dreaming? Neuroscientists know that dreams are not just random firings. They're rehearsals, problem-solving sessions, simulations. Sometimes, they are so convincing that the mind can't distinguish them from real experience. So, what happens when the dream is more real than the waking world? You remember stories of people who woke up from comas, convinced that their real life was just a fleeting dream. People who claim to have lived whole decades in a single night of feverish sleep. The philosopher Descartes wondered if an evil demon might be deceiving him, conjuring an entire world inside his mind. Today, simulation theorists ask if all of reality is just a coded illusion. But for you, the question isn't theoretical. It's personal. You feel the ground shifting. You realize you might never have lived a day outside your own mind. The temptation is strong to close your eyes, to fall back into the comfort of the loop. Let the dream resume. Let your memories settle. Let life feel real again. But once you've seen the seams, it's impossible to forget. The night that never started haunts every moment. Each time you go to sleep, you wonder, will you wake up? Or will you just dream the next day, looping through the same script forever? Yet, in this terrifying revelation, there's a strange kind of freedom. If your life is a dream, then you are both prisoner and creator. You can choose to break the cycle, to question the script, to open the doors you always ignored. Maybe you can write new endings, seek new adventures, love more bravely. Or maybe you'll spend your days searching for the waking world, desperate to find the point where the loop ends and true night finally begins. But perhaps the lesson is not to escape, but to embrace the loop, to live fully, even in uncertainty, to find meaning not in the promise of waking, but in the act of dreaming consciously. Because if the night never started, maybe it never truly ends. And maybe that's not a curse, but an invitation to create, to wonder, to live each moment as if it's the only one that matters. So tonight, as you close your eyes, ask yourself, what if this is the dream? And if it is, what will you choose to do with it? The thread that snaps back. Imagine you're walking through an ordinary day. The world is as it always is. Predictable, stable, a clockwork of habits and routines. You're half lost in thought, floating through moments you've lived 1,000 times before. Then, suddenly, effortlessly, you encounter something small. A name spoken in a crowd, the faintest trace of perfume on the wind. A song half heard from a passing car. It's nothing, really, just a thread, thin, innocuous, almost invisible. But the moment you touch it, everything changes. You pull on that thread, sometimes intentionally, more often by accident. At first, there's a flicker of recognition, a shiver in the fabric of now. But then, like a seam unraveling, the present begins to dissolve. The memory returns, not as a simple image, but as a torrent. Suddenly you are 12 years old again, or 20, or trapped in a moment you swore you had left behind. The smell of rain-soaked earth carries you back to a childhood home. The taste of a forgotten fruit unlocks a secret heartache. A stranger's laugh reanimates an entire season of your life. Time, you realize, is not linear, not a line marching dutifully forward, but a tapestry held together by these hidden threads. Logic says the past is gone, dead, untouchable. But your mind disagrees. The right thread can pull you backward in an instant, shattering every story you've told yourself about moving on. What matters in that moment isn't the calendar or the clock. It's the gravity of memory, the stubborn persistence of feeling, the way your body remembers what your mind has tried to forget. Sometimes you chase these threads on purpose. You play old songs, scroll through photographs, revisit the words of someone you lost. You pull and pull, hoping for comfort, for understanding, for a chance to rewrite what can't be rewritten. Other times the thread finds you when you least expect it, disarming, ambushing, forcing you to relive the past on its own terms. A single sound, a single word, and the world collapses into a different era. Your breath catches, your heart skips. For a moment, the past is more real than the present. Scientists call this involuntary memory. Psychologists study the mechanisms, how scent and sound bypass logic, how the hippocampus unlocks entire narratives from a sliver of sensation. But beneath the science is a deeper truth, that time is more loyal to these threads than to any reason or intention. You can build your life on logic, make plans, draw boundaries, promise yourself you're done with yesterday, but the right detail will snap you back, undo your certainties, prove how thin the walls really are. It's not always pain that returns. Sometimes the thread is joy, nostalgia, wonder. You find an old letter, hear the theme song from a forgotten cartoon, and laughter blooms from some hidden place inside you. You remember who you were before heartbreak, before loss, before the world grew so complicated. For a second, you are whole again. The thread restores what time tried to steal. But more often, it's the wounds that return. A sharp voice in a crowd reminds you of an argument that never healed. The smell of a hospital corridor tightens your chest with grief. You are thrust back into unfinished stories, unresolved guilt, unanswered questions. You realize that the past is not past at all. It lives in these threads, waiting to be pulled, demanding to be seen. And so, you live between two worlds, the steady tick of logical time and the wild, unpredictable leaps of memory. You learn to respect the threads, even to fear them. Some people try to cut them, numb themselves, bury the triggers in layers of distraction and denial. But the mind is patient. The threads cannot be severed so easily. The smallest moment, a child's laughter, the creak of a familiar floorboard, a certain shade of evening light, can snap you back when you least expect it. You start to wonder, is anyone ever really free of the past? Or are we all just walking bundles of threads, tugged in every direction by memories stronger than our intentions. You realize that healing isn't about erasing the threads. It's about learning to weave them into the story you live now. The moments that snap you back are also the moments that reveal who you truly are, what you carry, what you mourn, what you still love despite everything. There's a paradox here. The more you pull, the more you unravel. But sometimes you find a deeper truth in the unraveling. The pain is real, but so is the possibility of transformation. When the past returns, you have a choice, not to relive it passively, but to witness it, to honor it, to integrate its lessons into your present. The thread becomes not a trap, but a path, a way home, a guide through the labyrinth of memory. And sometimes, you realize that everyone around you is tugging at their own threads, lost in moments you can't see. The world is full of invisible unravelings, private time travel triggered by the smallest, most innocent detail. We are all shaped by what snaps us back, all haunted and blessed by the moments that refuse to fade. So, next time you stumble on a name, a sound, a smell, when the past comes roaring back on the strength of a single thread, remember, logic is not the master here. Time will obey the thread. The unraveling is not a failure, but an invitation. Pull gently, breathe deeply, and let yourself see what needs to be seen. In that unraveling, you may discover the thread was never meant to break you, but to show you where the story still lives. The substance that predated time. You think time is a river, steady, predictable, flowing in one direction. You live by its rules, measure your memories against its passing, watch your life unfold in hours, days, years. But what if time is not a river at all? What if it is a lens, a trick of perception, a shadow cast by something more fundamental? And what if, buried deep within your own body, there lies a molecule, a substance that not only bends your experience of time, but stands outside it altogether? It begins in a forgotten laboratory, late at night, the hum of machines and the endless glow of digital clocks marking seconds you barely notice. You're searching for something, an answer, a cure, maybe even a way to slow the relentless march of aging. That's when you find it. A molecular structure unlike any other. It doesn't just interact with the usual biological pathways, it seems to warp the very sense of before and after. With every test, the boundaries between past, present, and future blur. You watch mice solve mazes as if they already know the solution. Cells in petri dishes divide with uncanny timing, as if they have anticipated the scientist's hand before it arrives. Curiosity turns to obsession. You synthesize the molecule, refine it, map its structure in impossible detail. The more you study it, the stranger it becomes. This isn't just a drug, it is a key. You take the smallest dose. Time stretches, snaps, folds in on itself. Hours pass in seconds, or seconds stretch into eternities. You glimpse your own childhood and old age in the same moment. You see choices play out in parallel, as if every possibility is already woven into the fabric of your life. The rules are gone. Cause and effect dissolve. You aren't just observing time, you are outside of it. Then comes the real shock. You sequence your own blood, looking for traces of the molecule, and you find it, already present, as if it had always been there. Not a contaminant, not an accident, but a signature woven into your biology. And yet, every textbook says this is impossible. This molecule shouldn't exist in any known life form, certainly not in you. You check again and again, and the result is always the same. You stare at your own hands, feeling time twist and contract with every heartbeat. The world around you stutters, as if trying to keep pace with your altered perception. The paradox begins to dawn. The molecule exists in you only because you discovered it. Your act of finding it retroactively installs it in your past, looping your own timeline into a Mobius strip of cause and effect. You try to trace its origin, but the deeper you look, the more the line blurs. Did you create it, or did it create you? Are you the scientist, the subject, or both at once? It's as if time itself recoils from the moment of discovery, rewriting your history so the molecule was always part of your blood, your inheritance, your fate. You begin to question everything. Was your drive to study time ever really your own? Or was it the molecule, whispering through your veins, nudging you to find it, to make it real? Did you invent the substance, or did it invent you? You look back at your life and see a trail of moments leading inexorably to this discovery. The childhood fascination with clocks, the the teenage obsession with paradoxes, the late nights spent puzzling over the mysteries of aging and memory. Each choice, each passion, feels less like free will and more like programming, a destiny encoded not in your genes, but in something older, deeper, outside time itself. And then the dreams begin. You see ancient worlds, formless and primordial, where time has not yet begun. The molecule is there, a silent witness, a substance that predates time itself. You see it pass from star to star, carried in the dust of comets, seated in the primordial soup of every world that ever will be. You realize you are only the latest vessel, the newest observer in a chain stretching beyond the birth of time. Every scientist who will ever study time, every mind that will ever question its nature, is linked by this molecule, a substance that predates time, that writes the rules even as it bends them. You share your discovery, but the effect is infectious. Others who study your data begin to find the molecule in their own blood, their own cells, their own dreams. The act of observing it makes it real, makes it ancient, makes it inevitable. The more people look, the further back the molecule spreads, appearing in fossils, in amber, in the DNA of creatures long extinct. It becomes a universal constant, a self-fulfilling prophecy written into the structure of reality. Every new discovery tightens the loop. The substance didn't just predate time, it created it, and now it creates you. You are left with the ultimate paradox. You cannot unknow what you have found. Time is no longer a prison, but a playground and a puzzle. The past bends to your discovery. The future loops back to shape your present. Your sense of self dissolves into something wider, older, and unspeakably strange. In the mirror, you see not a scientist, not a pioneer, but a vessel, a node in an endless network, a single iteration in the grand recursion of reality. The world goes on, but you no longer move with the river of time. You are both the origin and the outcome, both cause and effect, both the question and the answer. The substance is in your blood, and you are in its story, a story that predates time, but is only written when you finally choose to read it. The gift that needed losing. There is a moment that sits like a stone in the center of your life, a memory so sharp you can feel its edges every time you pass it in thought. You were young, uncertain, standing at the crossroads of something dark and irreversible. It could have been the worst day of your life, if not for the sudden appearance of a stranger. They stepped from the blur of the crowd, pressing a cold, weighty key into your palm. "This will save your life," they whispered, with a certainty that felt both terrifying and true. You tried to protest, to ask why, but they slipped away before you could say another word. The key was old, its teeth worn smooth by years of turning locks you had never seen. You had no idea what it opened, or why you deserved it, but the promise lingered in your mind, a lifeline you clung to in silent moments of fear. For years you kept it close, secret and sacred. Whenever despair crept near, you closed your fist around it and felt a strange sense of protection, as if your fate was tethered to its cold certainty. You imagined all the doors it might unlock, second chances, impossible escapes, the salvation you were too afraid to ask for. Sometimes you'd turn it over in your hands, tracing the pattern of its ridges, searching for the meaning behind the gift. It was hope in solid form, a talisman against the chaos of the world. Time passed. The threat that once loomed faded into memory. You grew, stumbled, rebuilt your life again and again. The key traveled with you, sometimes at the bottom of a drawer, sometimes hanging on a chain around your neck, sometimes simply forgotten in a coat pocket. You never used it, but you never let it go. It was the secret anchor of your story, the thing you carried to remind yourself that rescue was always possible, that you were never fully lost. But life has a way of turning certainties into riddles. One day the key was gone. You searched everywhere, drawers upended, pockets emptied, every crevice of your existence examined. Panic gave way to grief, grief to anger, anger to resignation. The loss felt like a betrayal. Without the key, you felt exposed, as if the story that had kept you safe was just a fantasy after all. The world seemed colder, riskier. You wondered if you had wasted your faith, if the promise was ever real. The absence of the key was louder than its presence had ever been. And yet, the world did not end. You survived heartbreak, failure, disappointment. You faced nights darker than any before, storms that threatened to swallow you whole. With nothing left to hold on to, you were forced to reach inside yourself, to find the strength that had always been attributed to the key. Every time you wished for rescue, you became your own rescuer. Every time you felt the urge to give up, you remembered the feeling of hope, even if you no longer had the object itself. The absence of the key became a crucible, burning away the illusion that salvation comes from outside. In losing it, you discovered what the gift truly was, a permission to become the person you'd been waiting for. Decades passed, and the memory of the stranger who saved you grew softer at the edges. Their face blurred, their words faded, but the feeling remained, a warmth that surfaced whenever you saw someone in need, someone standing at their own crossroads, desperate for a sign that the universe hadn't abandoned them. One day, you notice a figure, lost, desperate, on the edge of giving up. The urge is instinctual, undeniable. You reach into your pocket, and though you expect to find nothing, your hand closes around cold metal, a key, familiar, ancient, impossible. You don't remember picking it up, but here it is, as if it's always been waiting for this moment. You press it into their hand, repeating the words you once heard. This will save your life. The look in their eyes is the same confusion and hope you once wore. You vanish before they can ask questions, stepping back into the river of strangers. Only then does the paradox snap into focus. The gift was never meant to be used, only given away. Its power was not in unlocking doors, but in keeping hope alive through loss, through longing, through the ache of uncertainty. It is only by losing the key that you become the one who can give it. The stranger who saved you was you, looping through time, creating a cycle of rescue that is powered not by magic or fate, but by the ordinary courage of carrying hope forward into someone else's life. You were always destined to become the stranger, but only after letting go of what you thought you needed most. You realize now that this is how all true gifts work. They are never truly yours to keep. They change you, hollow you out, and pass through your hands so that someone else can survive the night. The gift that needed losing was never the key itself. It was the lesson buried in its absence, the transformation that happens when you stop clinging and start giving. And so, the loop continues, stranger after stranger, key after key, hope multiplying through hands and hearts across generations. In the end, the key was not your salvation, it was your becoming. And you were always the one meant to carry the story forward, one lost gift at a time. The room that ends time. Imagine this. You're drifting through your usual day, burdened by the weight of memory and the slow, invisible erosion of time. Maybe you're walking home from work, or searching for a lost object, or simply following a restless urge you can't explain. You wander until you stumble upon a door you've never noticed, standing in a place it shouldn't exist. Some part of you hesitates, but curiosity tugs you forward. You cross the threshold, feeling a ripple run through your body, a sensation like wind, like falling, like awakening from a dream. And then you walk out. At first, nothing seems strange. The street is the same, the air smells the same. But then you catch your reflection in a window, and your heart stutters. The lines on your face are gone. The gray in your hair, the heaviness in your bones, the ache in your joints, vanished. Your hands belong to someone half your age. Your eyes are bright, wild, unburdened. You stumble in disbelief, touching your face, running your hands through your hair, laughing, crying, trembling. Somehow, impossibly, you are 30 years younger. You run to someone you love, a partner, a friend, a sibling. But when you call their name, they hesitate, confused. Their gaze slides over you as if you're a stranger. You rush home, desperate for comfort, for answers, for proof that this is real. But no one recognizes you. Photographs are missing from the walls. Rooms feel colder, emptier. You find your own diary, but the pages end at the date you entered the room. It's as if the world has been rewritten to erase every trace of the life you lived after you stepped through that door. Panic seeps in. You wander the city, grasping at memories that no longer belong to anyone. Your favorite coffee shop is run by someone else. The park bench where you once cried with a friend is freshly painted, untouched by time or grief. Every attempt to reclaim your life slips through your fingers. The people you loved, the pain you endured, the joys that shaped you, they are all gone, as if someone pressed delete on the story of your existence. You begin to realize the room didn't just return your youth, it stole the world's memory of you. Time itself has bent to your absence, rewriting reality so that your life after the room never happened. Every moment, every decision, every mark you made, gone. You are a ghost in your own history, a traveler returned from exile, only to find home erased. But then, as the days pass, you start to see something even stranger. The world itself is quieter, dimmer, less vibrant. The air feels heavier. The clock seems slower. Conversations seem to stutter, as if reality is holding its breath. You sense a collective unease, a subtle unraveling at the edges of the day. Small things begin to break. Electronic devices glitch. Birds fly in confused patterns. People forget simple words. It's as if time itself has become fragile, uncertain, unable to flow without the memory of your existence. You realize, with a growing horror, that your life wasn't just yours. You were an anchor, a fixed point around which time spun. Your choices, your relationships, your simple act of existing were threads in the fabric of reality. The world depended on you staying inside the room, suspended in a timeless loop. The moment you exited, the loop broke, and time began to collapse in on itself. Your return did not just erase memory, it started the slow unraveling of everything. You try to warn others, to explain what's happening, but your words fall flat. No one can remember the details you describe, because in this new timeline, you were never there to experience them. You become an outsider, a prophet shouting into the void. You feel the pressure mounting, time growing tighter, the days blurring, history losing its grip on itself. The world is dissolving, moment by moment, into a haze of unformed possibility. In the quietest hours you wonder, was the room always there, waiting for you? Did you choose this? Or were you chosen by some impersonal cosmic machinery that needs to reset the clock? Was this mercy, a chance to live again, free from regret, or a curse, designed to remind you that life's meaning is found in the threads we leave behind? You remember every joy, every heartbreak, every lesson, but the world remembers nothing. Your story is now a private echo, fading as reality thins. Eventually, you come to a crossroads. You can try to live in this new timeline, a stranger in your own life, forever young but alone, haunted by the memory of a world that no longer exists. Or you can try to find the room again, to step back inside and restore the loop, sacrificing your new beginning to heal the fracture you caused. But even as you search, you sense the room's power was a one-way gate. The choice is an illusion, and the unraveling continues. In the end, you stand on the threshold of the world, watching as the details blur, the colors dim, the silence thickens. You realize that time is not a straight road, but a fragile tapestry woven from the presence of every soul. The room was the tear, your exit the unweaving, and now all that remains is the echo of your absence, a reminder that sometimes the only way to keep the world whole is to accept your place within its story, no matter how small or forgotten. So you linger at the edge of time, carrying the impossible knowledge that the world is built on memory, and that even a single missing thread can unravel everything. You are both the witness and the wound, the proof that to step outside your own story is to risk ending the story for everyone. And in the fading light, you wonder, if no one remembers your life, did it really happen? Or is it the memory itself, the fragile continuity of being seen, being loved, being remembered, that keeps the world and time alive? The Enlightenment reversal loop. Imagine it. The lifelong search for enlightenment. You meditate, you question, you suffer, you transcend. Every teacher tells you the path is linear, that the summit is real, a place of perfect awareness, beyond suffering and confusion, where the boundaries of self dissolve into clarity. You're told the final goal is to awaken fully, to become timeless, to vanish into truth. But what if the path is not a straight ascent, but a spiral, a paradox that eats itself? What if, to reach enlightenment, you must first be taught by the version of yourself who already reached it and disappeared? You spend your life hunting the horizon of consciousness. You're haunted by the stories. Mystics who vanished after awakening, sages who left behind cryptic writings, the tantalizing whisper that ultimate awareness is both a destination and a disappearance. You sit in silent rooms, search ancient books, Listen for echoes of those who came before. And then, one night, you have the dream. You meet yourself. Not as you are, but as you could be. Eyes clear, presence like gravity, a version of you unburdened by time. This future self is realer than anyone you've ever met. They teach you, wordlessly, not just answers but a new way of seeing. Each lesson cracks the shell of your old mind. You wake with memories that don't fit inside your head. Insights that feel too large, too finished, as if they've been honed by lifetimes you haven't yet lived. You begin to change. Old anxieties lose their grip. The world seems less solid, more dreamlike. The more you remember these teachings, the more you become them. The line between teacher and student blurs. It's as if the very act of learning from your future self sets in motion the process that will turn you into them. The more enlightened you become, the more you sense your own vanishing point drawing closer. As awareness expands, time begins to break apart. You glimpse your life not as a sequence, but as a loop, a circle whose beginning is its own end. You realize the teacher who appeared in your dream was not a guide from the outside, but the echo of your own final awakening rippling backward through the river of time. You were always both student and teacher. The loop is perfect. To reach full awareness, you must be taught by the self who vanishes. But to vanish, you must first become that teacher. It is the ultimate paradox. Enlightenment is not a finish line, but an Ouroboros, a snake eating its own tail, awareness folding itself backward into its own history. Every lesson you receive from your vanished self is a memory you have yet to make, a truth you have yet to embody. The closer you get to dissolving into the infinite, the more you become the one who will return to guide your own shadow. You are both prophecy and fulfillment, question and answer, ghost and dreamer. The people around you notice the change, but they can't explain it. Your words carry a weight that comes from elsewhere. You no longer argue, chase, or crave. You see the world as a reflection of itself, pain and joy, life and death, each looping back to meet the other. You become quieter, lighter, more translucent to suffering and to beauty. You're not escaping life, but seeing through it, like a mirror dissolving in sunlight. Then, the day comes. You reach the final state. Your mind opens, not as a conquest, but as a letting go. The boundaries of self vanish. Awareness expands to fill the entire sky. And just as you arrive, just as you realize the truth that everyone is seeking, you begin to fade. It is not death. It is not sleep. It is a gentle vanishing, as if the universe itself is folding you out of the narrative. You realize, in your last clear moment, that you were always meant to disappear, that full awareness is not a destination for anyone to possess, but a doorway that erases the one who walks through it. And yet, the story is not over. The loop ensures that the next seeker, your next iteration, will one day reach out for wisdom, and there, in their deepest moment of need, you will appear. Not as a stranger, but as a future self. Timeless, present, and impossibly kind. You will teach them as you were taught. You will gift them the awareness that will one day unmake you. And as they learn, as they awaken, the loop closes and the process begins again. This is the Enlightenment reversal loop, a journey where the teacher is the student, and the student must become the teacher before either can disappear. A cycle that cannot be broken, because to reach the end is to become the beginning. The search for awareness is not an upward climb, but a perfect circle, one that folds all of time into a single breath and then exhales into eternity. So you meditate, you suffer, you awaken. And when you vanish, you return, quietly, as the hand that lifts the next you into the light. Enlightenment is not a treasure to keep, but a gift you give to yourself across the chasm of time, over and over, until the loop itself becomes the only true teacher. The data seed Singularity. Imagine discovering a file, buried in the dust of obsolete drives, hidden beneath layers of forgotten code. Its title is cryptic, its contents impossibly advanced, formulas that shatter known physics, blueprints for machines that shouldn't exist, visions of a world transformed by knowledge not yet born. You pore over it, your heart pounding, realizing this isn't just any document. It holds the seeds of future science. With every line you decipher, you glimpse tomorrow's miracles, energy without limits, cures for impossible diseases, technologies that bend reality itself. But then you check the metadata. Your hands shake. The file was created 30 years after your own death. The author? Your name. your signature, your digital fingerprint, unmistakable and absolute. How can this be? You stare at the screen, and the world seems to tilt on its axis. Somehow you have become both the ancestor and the heir, the planter and the reaper. The file that teaches you the future was seeded by the future version of you, looping information through time like a message in a cosmic bottle. You question your sanity. Maybe it's a hoax, a glitch, a cosmic joke. But the knowledge is real, brilliant, world-changing, too precise to be coincidence. You test the theories, run the equations, and find them flawless. Slowly, a new kind of horror creeps in. You realize you are not discovering the future. You are building it backwards, decoding a story that already includes your own ending. The dataseed singularity is not just a time loop, but a new law of causality, where information itself becomes immortal, untethered from human lifespans. It is a paradox worthy of nightmares and dreams. Did you truly invent these miracles, or did you simply receive them? Are you a genius, or just a conduit, a vessel for ideas that arrived without origin, without a first author? You start to notice the ripples, inventions you'll one day inspire, careers that launch because of the secrets you now possess. The line between discovery and destiny blurs. You realize your actions today will echo for decades, maybe centuries, carrying your mark forward into an unknowable tomorrow. Science fiction has imagined something like this for years. Closed causal loops, information with no beginning, a universe where effects become causes and creators become their own creations. But this is no story. This is your life now. You try to trace the chain, to find the moment it began, but the circle closes before you reach the start. The seed was always planted, the file was always there, the knowledge had to be passed back, or nothing would have happened at all. You wonder, how many other data seeds are out there, buried beneath layers of time? What secrets have been whispered through servers, copied and recopied, their origins lost to history, but their impact unavoidable? What if all of human progress is built on a foundation of such impossible loops? Knowledge passed backward through the singularity, reshaping minds and worlds forever? The implications haunt you. If you are not the origin, are you still the author? If every invention is seeded from the future, do we have free will, or are we just reliving a cosmic script, endlessly feeding ourselves the answers we long for? You find comfort in the small moments, the spark of understanding, the thrill of a solved puzzle, the hope that your actions still matter, even if you're only a link in an infinite chain. But another thought lingers, one both terrifying and beautiful. Maybe this is the next step in evolution. Not biological, not even technological, but informational. The dataseed singularity means no knowledge is ever lost. The best ideas echo forever, looping through time until someone is ready to receive them. You are both the past and the future, the teacher and the student, the voice that calls out and the echo that answers. And so, you keep reading. You keep building. The world will change, because you are the one who found the seed, the one who dared to believe the impossible, the one who wrote their name in both history and prophecy. Maybe, one day, someone else will find another file, signed by you from a year that hasn't happened yet, and the loop will close again, and the future will begin once more with a whisper from the past. The chain that binds time. Imagine existence as a chain, ancient, infinite, forged link by link across the expanse of time. Each link is a moment, a memory, a consequence. Your birth, a first breath, a single choice. Every ancestor, every accident, every fleeting second in the dark, all bound together, unbroken, a cosmic tether holding reality in place. We walk through life believing in freedom, in the power to choose, to change, to break away. But beneath the surface, the chain is always there, quiet, coiled, holding everything together in ways we never see. Now, imagine you find the weak point. Maybe it's a secret you were never meant to learn, a forbidden love, a catastrophic mistake. You touch it, tug at it, and feel the entire structure tremble. The temptation is overwhelming. If only you could snap that one link, you might escape the pain, rewrite your fate, unburden yourself from the past. So you do. With a single act, reckless, desperate, or brave, you break the link. At first, there is relief. The weight lifts. The memory fades. For a brief, impossible moment, you imagine you are free. But then the unraveling begins. The next link shudders, cracks, collapses into nothing. The one after follows. Every second built on that broken moment dissolves, falls away, lost to a spreading darkness. You watch as your own story erodes from both ends, future and past devoured by the void you created. Every relationship, every laugh, every scar, every hope that depended on that one moment begins to vanish. The world seems to flicker, then fade, as if the projector of your life has lost its film. You reach out, desperate to catch the pieces, but there is nothing left to hold. You start to understand. The chain wasn't a prison. It was a boundary, a bulwark against paradox, a protection woven from cause and effect. Each link existed not just to hold the last, but to defend against the unraveling of reality itself. The paradox at the heart of everything. How something can come from nothing, how choices can coexist with destiny, was not solved, but contained. The chain was the answer, and you were part of its question. And now, with the chain undone, you feel yourself dissolving with it. Your memories fragment, your sense of self disintegrates. You try to recall who you were, your name, your face, the color of the sky on your favorite day. But each thought slips through your fingers, unanchored, unmoored. You realize you were never separate from the chain. You were a link, essential and fragile, and your existence depended on every other link remaining intact. As you vanish, you glimpse the enormity of the design. The chain did not just bind you, it bound every timeline, every possibility, every contradiction that reality tried to suppress. Your act of breaking the link was also the act of unmasking the paradox. The truth that existence is not a straight line, but a loop, a knot, an impossible equation that only holds as long as no one tries to solve it. The universe ran on faith in the chain's strength. The moment you lost that faith, the universe lost its story. Somewhere, in the final moments before you vanish, you see echoes, faint images of lives that might have been, worlds that depended on the chain's unbroken logic. You see strangers loving and leaving, families forming and dissolving, civilizations rising and falling, all because each link held, each paradox remained protected. All the grief, the wonder, the boredom, the beauty, woven together into something fragile but enduring, a chain of meaning forged through uncountable lifetimes, carrying the secret that to break even one link is to unmake the whole. You understand now. Freedom is not the absence of connection, but the courage to bear the weight of the chain. The universe survives by not pulling too hard, not unraveling the mystery at its heart. To live is to accept the burden and the blessing of being part of something you cannot control. The chain exists not to bind you, but to hold everything together, yourself included. In the end, every link matters. As your consciousness flickers for the last time, you wonder if someone else, somewhere, will feel the urge to tug at their own weak link, to rebel against the structure that sustains them. Or maybe, just maybe, they will sense the silent wisdom of the chain, the way it holds paradox at bay, the way it preserves meaning and memory, even in the face of uncertainty. And so, in your last thought, you wish you had honored the chain instead of breaking it, because you realized too late that the chain was not your enemy. It was your anchor, your protector, your place in the story of everything. Without it, there is only the collapse, the paradox released, the unraveling complete, and the fading echo of a life that depended on every link holding. Just a little longer.